What is good, fam? Happy Tuesday and welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 3-game NBA slate and 14-game MLB slate. Full show today. Joining me, we've got Greg Ehrenberg and Eric Lindquist. Guys, how are we doing? It's June already. When did that happen?
Today. That's how the calendar works. I'm doing good. Nobody cares at all, but I've got multiple computers now in front of me. I can't see Kayla, I can't see Eric because I'm just looking at the computer that's in front of me that I use to now look at my notes and to look at all the numbers that are in front of me and run my lineups. And then I have a separate streaming computer. I've got alternate screens here. I have an iPad. So I have so much going on in front of me. Nobody cares, but I could not be happier. This is the happiest I've ever been.
Hashtag how rich. Hashtag how rich.
Yep.
This is what happens when you have
Must
a 28-1 future out on Jokic, and you know that there's going to be an influx of income coming soon to one Greg Ehrenberg.
This is the company sent this to me. You think I'm forking over my own cash for this stuff?
Okay,
no,
well, there's that.
I'm famous. I get free things.
That's nice.
I bought my own microphone.
Oh my gosh. Is it going to fix your camera problem?
Hopefully not.
A joke. Yeah, honestly, it's kind of endearing at this point in time to just have it go and then come back. I don't know. That was terrible. That was my hand, everybody. How are we doing?
Oh, that's why I didn't know what happened.
I don't think it's funny.
I couldn't see you, so I don't know what hand motion you made.
Oh, yeah, because you have the monitors split and whatever else. This actually might be very, very fun going forward. I'm going to give you a lot of faces.
I actually don't look at the live feed. I look at the playback on YouTube. So I don't even watch you guys really.
How are we doing today, Kayla?
So
let's ramp this thing up. I need some energy out of you. You ready to go?
I'm having debilitating acid reflux, but I'm going to power through this.
That got real. Oh, no. Can I, did you have like a banana? Isn't that helpful or something?
No, bananas are bad.
Oh, those are bad. Okay.
I don't know what is going on, but yeah, I just ordered like edible aloe that's supposed to be here in the next few days that I'm going to try to I don't know. No one cares about this, but that's where I'm at.
I care about this. I want only the best things for you in life. There is that. Also, that sounded weird. We're going to move on. We have a show to do, don't we? We have a show.
That's right, we do. So friends, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. And don't forget to get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. Only looking to play NBA DFS? Then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for only $16.95 and our $4.95 NBA weekly express package, which gives you full Awesemo Plus access to NBA Showdown and single game contests. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Heading on into our bad beats. Last night, Joel Embiid's first quarter knee injury ruined almost half of the lineups and led to a win that only yours truly saw coming. How was the evening for both of you from a DFS and sports betting angle? Eric, we'll start with you here.
Absolutely garbage. Yesterday was hot garbage. So I did the pirate parlay. I put on a stupid costume. I put on a stupid hook. I said all the things that I wanted to say in the world. And then somehow the long shot on the card was the only thing that hit. We got Toronto that didn't even show up in game 7 for NHL. Carey Price continued to he was unbelievable in this series, and Toronto just choked at home up against Montreal. And then we had, of course, the Joel Embiid first quarter injury, which changed the dynamics of the entire NBA DFS slate, and a lot of positions I had on them at -8.5. So that was terrible. I hate cheering for Philadelphia as it is. And so then to have them lose me money was like a double whammy. And then, of course, the Dodgers came through and won 9-4. So the -1.5 run line there on the Flaherty-Bauer matchup ended up coming to fruition, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, so for me, I had what I feel like should have been a good NBA slate because I was on Robin Lopez yesterday. I was on DeAnthony Melton yesterday, and none of them mattered because I had Joel Embiid in 90% of my Draftkings lineup. So early on in that game, I was like, oh, look, Robin Lopez, especially when Gafford got in foul trouble, it was 2 minutes into the game. And then you see Robin Lopez is 1% owned on DraftKings. Just like, oh, I'm going to crush tonight. And then Joel Embiid, he gets off to a hot start, and then it just didn't matter because he gets hurt. So then that's already 90% of my lineups are dead. Then Russell Westbrook goes off because there's no Joel Embiid defending the paint. So yeah, I just absolutely got my ass kicked. And it was just, to me at least, I felt like it was things out of my control. But I mean, is it really ever in our control? It's not like I could ever, you know, I can't ever command which players are going to do well. But I feel like last night especially was nothing I could have done anything about.
Yeah, but injuries suck. Like, injuries are the worst, because whether it's Chris Paul or whether it's that, if it's an injury that happens before the game and you can kind of like make rational decisions, whether that's a Cameron Payne rostering or, you know, taking Chris Paul when he's 1 or 2% owned in a game 4, like those are the kind of decisions that I'm okay with injuries. But first quarter, Joel Embiid, it'd be also one thing if it was a 3K player, but when it's your 10K player, you're just so unbelievably dead.
That was where I was at yesterday.
Yep. My apologies. Rip City.
I never had any doubts in that Wizards game.
There's like this weird delay going on. I don't know what the delay is. Maybe it's the fact that Greg can't see us anymore, or that he's paying us no mind. I think that because I'm waiting. I'm watching Greg, and normally I'm like, it's like the double dutch on the playground thing, and not happening. Yeah. See, Jordan's got it. He knows what I mean. Do I go? Do I not go? Do I go? Do I not go?
Yeah, so I want to see. Look, now I can see you. This is the first time I've looked at you today. No, I'm not sure because I was looking at you before. But yeah, I can't see you again. Maybe.
Hey, can we uniformly do this together? Because it actually looked kind of cool on the screen. You start right, and then hang on.
I can't see it, but I can't see
it. You're right.
Boom. You're right. Boom. Boom. Boom.
I can't see whatever you're
doing. Are we supposed to be opposite or the same?
Yep, we're just head bobbing opposite. It looks cool. All right, that's fine. It's all. That was for my own amusement.
No one cares at all. Okay.
I'm positive that was not cool.
And we lost all the viewership in the world. Great.
It's confusing because it's reverse. So, and then I don't know. So I don't know what right and left you're talking about. Mine is different than yours, and it's confusing.
Slide to the
left.
left.
Let's get into the NBA.
Slide to the right. One hop this time.
That's 2 hops this time. Okay. NBA playoff game 5s. Here we go. The Celtics are massive underdogs in game 5 and will be without the services of Kemba Walker and Robert Williams once more. Can Jason Tatum and company keep it close? And who from Boston are you targeting for tournaments, Greg?
Yeah, so can the Celtics keep it close? I mean, I guess, but it's a 12.5-point spread. I'm pretty sure this has been the widest spread of the postseason. I can't remember there being a game with a wider spread than this. And I mean, if we're going to be targeting one guy in Boston, I kind of feel like it has to be Jason Tatum at this point. The only thing is, relative to some of the other payoff options on the slate, I still prefer Jokic to Jason Tatum. I still prefer LeBron James to Jason Tatum. So the one guy that I'm looking to target from Boston, if I had to play somebody, it would be Tatum. But I mean, I still have some of my reservations here, and LeBron with Anthony Davis, that's a spot I want to pay up for. Jokic in a 2-2 game where I think we finally might see him play 40 minutes. That's a spot I want to pay for. Tatum, definitely a viable option. He's the overall best Boston play, but I'm not totally sure right now how much exposure I'm actually going to get to him.
I'm going to get to a lot of Jason Tatum, and here's why. There's no reason not to let him just run free this entire game and play 40-something minutes. I mean, this is the end of your season if you don't win. It's Jason Tatum who's going to get every opportunity. And, you know, the Nets are obviously going to go out with a game plan to have him in check. But after sitting, only played 21 minutes in that one blowout in that game 2, where he got dinged up. Played 41 and 40 minutes the last 2. I think you're looking at 40 plus. His usage is off the charts. 30 and 22 shot attempts the last 2. That's what we're going to see out of him, because, you know, he's going to have to go for 45 plus real points if the Celtics are going to come close to winning as 12.5-point dogs. So I think Jason Tatum in this spot is probably, and I think the ownership's already there, which makes it interesting because we do have a plethora of spend up options to choose from, a number of guys that we kind of want to be isolating, but there's a reason that he's the highest owned power forward on FanDuel. There's a reason that he's basically one of the highest owned plays of the entire slate over on DraftKings right now, the highest owned play on the entire slate. And I'm going to be well over the field if that number stays exactly the same.
Quite unbelievably, all of the Brooklyn Big Three eclipsed 60 fantasy points on Sunday. So, Eric, in this closeout game, which one is your priority for tonight?
So, for me, it just always comes down to Harden. So, I think Harden on DraftKings specifically has just such a good chance of making double doubles and triple doubles every single time out. I mean, the rebounds haven't necessarily been there as much, 5, 7, 5, but Kyrie Irving had a real large outlier game. He had 9 rebounds he had 11. He finished with 11 in that game. I was looking at my phone and I thought that was the end of that, but he had 11 within that game. Had 6. Like these are a little bit unsustainable numbers for Kyrie Irving rebounding the ball. James Harden, triple double upside when he hits the floor floor. They're at 10-6. I think that we're seeing the ownership kind of being pretty flat. It's pretty spread out amongst these three. You can play him over at shooting guard. You can play Kyrie at shooting guard too and get a discount. But I just think James Harden brings the most upside to the table. So if I'm comparing him to guys like Jokic and Tatum, which is kind of what you have to do if you want to roster him, I think James Harden will always kind of be my favorite of these three until the salary gets out of hand.
It's Harden for me. And it's just that so Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden. I'm surprised that we saw all three of them have such big games last time out. And I guess it's always on the table to some extent, especially this game is a 234.5 point total. Portland, Denver, 226 total. And then the Lakers Suns game, only a 209 total. So we're expecting this game to have a lot more points scored than the other games. Then also you consider that the Nets are favored by 12.5 points and their team total is way higher than any other teams on the slate. But it's still hard for me to think that we're going to see something like what happened last game happen again, where Harden, Irving, and Durant all go off. So I agree with you, Eric, just from a standpoint of Harden probably the most likely to have a big game just because he's not relying on points. If Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant aren't scoring, it's not like there's going to be a whole bunch of rebounds and assists going to them. Harden's going to be scoring. He's going to be rebounding. He's going to have more assists than them. If you look at the player props for this game, Harden has a 10.5 point assist total. He has an 8.5 rebound total. So those are higher numbers that we're getting from even like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant combined, basically. For this spot. So with that in mind, James Harden, he had his fantasy points in a myriad of different ways. And that's not the case with Irving or Durant. So I think he's the safest play of the group and has the most upside.
So which of the other two would you kind of want to take a shot on? Because I think, well, first of all, I don't want to touch a spread that's 12.5 in the playoffs. Just from a sports betting angle, just to address that, I think this entire game is a stay away from me. Not sure if you feel differently. But amongst the other two, I still kind of want to go to Durant. Like Kyrie Irving, I feel like is definitely going to be the third wheel of this team going forward. He has the lowest fantasy point per minute rate as it is. 1.54 for James Harden on DraftKings for the season, 1.46 for Durant, 1.31 for Kyrie. The prices started to adjust to get down to 8,800, but I feel like he's more of an 8K player with those other two on the floor with him.
I have Kyrie project for more fantasy points than Durant, only marginally though. But still, at least in my initial builds, I'm not getting to either of them a ton. And it's just an issue of if I'm paying up for a guard, James Harden is the guy that I get to over Kyrie Irving. If I'm paying up for a forward, I prefer to get to LeBron James than Kevin Durant today, just because of the situation that the Lakers are in. And I know we're going to talk about that in a second. So I don't want to get too ahead of us here. But I mean, it's an important comparison point. So I'll just leave it at this for now, that I would rather pay up for LeBron than Durant today.
Noted. Greg, quick pause here. You said that you taught Justin Timberlake how to dance. So can we get a quick bye?
No. But also,
do you even know that dance?
First of all, no, I don't know that dance. Just somebody had put something in the. I really don't. But somebody put something in the YouTube chat about how I was what was it? I was a backup dancer or something like that for Justin Timberlake. So I just came back and I was like, no, that's not true. I actually taught Justin Timberlake how to dance. But that doesn't mean I know what the actual moves are, because I'm just talking shit on YouTube. I don't know nothing.
Well, great job teaching him how to dance, because he's done well with it.
Yeah, he owes it to me. How
do Eric and I know it and you don't? Never mind. I answered my question.
We need to move on.
The Portland and Denver clash in the penultimate game of the night, with the Blazers having just put a beating down in game 4 to even up the series. Greg, who you got winning this one tonight, and briefly touch on the players you have the most interest in from this matchup?
All right. So starting with who I think is going to win. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up game. I tend to lean towards Denver, though. But here's something I think is kind of interesting in this spot. Jokic has not played very many minutes so far in this series, and I think he's going to tonight. I gave him 38 minutes in my projection, and that makes him a really strong play. But I'm kind of going out on a limb with that, because if you look at the games so far in the series, he's played 35 minutes, 31, 35 and a half, then 27 last game, but that game was a blowout. So me giving him 38, there's not really a precedent here, at least in terms of this series. It really has more to do with, I just look at this series tied 2-2, game 5, pivotal game in for the season. And that kind of makes me think that we're going to see more of Jokic than we've seen in other games. So that makes him, to me, my overall favorite pay up option on the slate. As for other guys to get to, though, I don't know that there's any one Denver Nugget guy that I really, really love. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. is viable, but I don't want to step on your guy here or say anything bad about him, Kayla, but this is a slate that's going to be stars and scrubs for me. I project him well overall, but he's kind of in a price point that's going to be hard for me to get to because there's so many studs I want to pay up for on the slate that I think I'm going to be taking my chance on kind of crappy value plays and then paying up for a lot of guys going stars and scrubs. So I don't think that Porter Jr. is going to be a priority play for me. Somebody like Campazzo, somebody else too expensive for me to pay up for. So it's going to be Jokic for me. And then on the Portland side, back to Covington for the millionth time this postseason.
Yeah, I've got to play Michael Porter Jr. on FanDuel, though. It's 6,500. Now that price has started to come down to more of a reasonable level. I mean, he was 7,600, I believe, when this series started. Now you're basically saving $1,100 off the top. You've got to play 2. And yeah, we have LeBron and Kevin Durant. We have some major upside that's at the position, but it's going to be hard to pay up for everybody. And as you said, I really love Jokic as well. And so I think I have no problem playing him and Porter Jr. in the same lineups. I got to expect, I mean, we've had 3 really, really wonky games in this series so far. First game, they lost by 14 to Portland. Next time out, they won by 19. They had the one close game in game 3, the Robert Covington game, and then 23 minutes for Michael Porter Jr. last time out. I think that we're going to see him start to regress towards his mean, and positive regression is in store for him. So I do like getting to Michael Porter Jr. What I find to be difficult for me is figuring out how I compare guys like Aaron Gordon and Monty Morris to the other side of the ball here. And we'll talk about Portland a little bit, but I hate playing Aaron Gordon, but I think there has to be some interest there at 5K over on FanDuel. Again, those minutes were just down because of the massive blowout. They just ended up punting that game entirely, but 34 minutes, there's some upside still at that tag. We haven't seen it at all. I don't know, for basically the last month out of him, but even at 5K, he's going to be playing enough minutes that I think there's got to be interest there. Campazzo is definitely a no for me. Monty Morris, you can take shots on, but yeah, as you said, Jokic is definitely the priority. And then Michael Porter Jr., I'm probably going to be over the field on as well.
Michael in chat wants to know why I never drop any picks. Michael, I always back Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter Jr. Those are always my picks.
Yeah, she won all the money on this panel last night. I can tell you that. Too bad you didn't bet me for anything when I threw it out there into the ether. You didn't want any of that smoke. You didn't actually stand up for your pick. And had you taken the money line on that, that would have been outrageous.
What was the money line yesterday?
I think it was like 375 is what I saw at one spot. I think it was probably a little bit higher in some spots. I mean, they closed at 8.5 was the spread. So I think that's basically.
And you gave me an extra point. You're going to give me 9.5.
I was going to give you 9.5. I just basically said the Sixers were going to win by double digits. And of course, I actually bet it. And I actually am very sad right now.
I kind of regret when Embiid first left the game. I considered betting the live. I just assumed he was going to come back.
Me too.
I never thought he was actually going to leave the game, especially because different people were reporting different things. There was, one on the broadcast they're saying tailbone.
Tailbone.
And, if you looked online, they were saying knee, and then somebody else, I think it was a sideline reporter, something had said hip. And I was like, it just seems like there's nothing happening here. And then he just never. Maybe also I was kind of jaded because I was just like, he's in all my lineups. He has to come back because I have to make money today. And then he just never came back in. But yeah, that would have been a smart hedge for me, was bet that the live line on the Wizards, just because number one, it obviously would have been a good bet at the time. But then number two would have been a good way to get a little bit of a hedge against my DFS lineups. But lo and behold, I was left holding the bag from all ends.
Is it just me too, or have there been multiple times in the last couple games? Because I obviously had the same thought where I was like, oh, Embiid's going to the locker room. But we've seen like 15 times guys go to the locker room and then come back and play. And it's just like they're going to the bathroom or something and coming back. It seems like it's happening more in this postseason. And maybe that's because sideline reporters are more active. There's only so many games to be watching. There's more eyeballs on it. I'm not sure, but there's something to that. I'm pretty sure, because I thought about it and I was like, oh, well, I just assumed he was going to come back in. And then, as you said, knee, hip, tailbone. What in the world are we trying to figure out here, y'all?
Full body pain.
Full body. Body no longer going to return. Yeah.
Okay, wait, I'm blanking. Who was it? I think it was a football game where they left. I can't remember if it was NFL or college football, and everyone thought they were having bathroom issues.
Lamar Jackson.
Thank you. And it was a playoff game, right?
So there's been other ones, like, Paul Pierce, right? He had to get wheelchair. Yeah, he had to get wheelchaired off the court because he shit his pants. Like, that's the thing that happened. That's just true though.
He told the story and it was incredible. And now he's no longer an employee of ESPN for other things, but such is life.
Such is life. All right, moving on. The Lakers and LeBron James will look to overcome injuries to Anthony Davis and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to Game 5 on the road. Eric, does betting the Lakers at +5 interest you, and who benefits most from AD's absence for fantasy?
No. I want the Suns, and I want a lot of the Suns. I even think like LeBron James isn't necessarily 100%. And basically, we haven't seen him get up to 40 minutes here in a long, long time. I think he's going to have to play inflated minutes if they're going to keep this close and going to keep it there. But looking at the rest of this roster, let me just read off some names for you on who's going to be playing alongside him. Like Andre Drummond is going to be playing the starting center spot, and it's going to be a disaster. Dennis Schroeder. Kyle Kuzma is going to be having to play some meaningful basketball. Markieff Morris, Marc Gasol. Now, I hate myself because I have bet against LeBron James in the playoffs enough times to know that it's probably a disaster more times than it's not, but that doesn't mean that it's going to change my perspective right now. I think LeBron is not 100%. I think Anthony Davis out is gigantic, probably impacts this team more. It's obvious. It's just obvious to me that it should be more than 5 or 5.5 or wherever the numbers are that you're floating. Check out Odd Shopper. You can find the best lines in the books that correlate with that. But I want all of the Suns. If Chris Paul is going to look anything like he did in Game 4, distributing, he still wasn't like 100%. You could see that, but he was so much more effective and playing floor general. And the Suns have the next, like the second, third, fourth, and fifth best players active in this game. So give me the Suns side.
Yeah, I tend to lead towards the Suns. Personally, I haven't bet on it. The one thing I do have bets on is just Suns futures. I have Suns to win the championship. I have Suns to win the West. I didn't bet on them as individual game, though. I thought that I think the -5, -5.5, wherever it's at, wherever you're looking, is probably about appropriate. What I think makes more sense is just that the Suns have better futures odds than the Lakers, even though they're favored to win the series at this point. As for this individual game from a DFS standpoint, LeBron is my second favorite pay-up option other than Jokic on the slate. And this is another one that's a little bit of a leap of faith. And maybe I'm just buying a little bit into the name value a little bit too much, because I agree with Eric that LeBron, well, he's not playing poorly in this postseason by any means. He's not playing like LeBron. And I think that we're going to get a LeBron game tonight just because he's LeBron. And I know that there's not a lot of logic to that. If you look at his numbers with AD off the court this year, they are strong. 33.2% usage rate, 1.5 fantasy points per minute. I have LeBron playing 40 minutes tonight. I think there's a chance he plays more than 40 minutes. So with that in mind, we're looking at right around 60 fantasy points from him just based on that information. It is obviously a tough matchup against the Suns also, but I just have to think that for the Lakers to have any chance in this game, LeBron just plays a ton of minutes and goes nuts. And that's one of the things that I think is actually one of the more likely scenarios.
The Suns' Chris Paul looked much improved in Game 4, and now they look to have a strong chance to take a 3-2 lead in this series. Greg, do you think they can get it done? And who are your priorities to roster in this one tonight, which you basically just said?
All right. So yes, I think the Suns can win this game. This is a bad job of writing by Eric. What are we doing here? We're just taking the same premises from the question.
I'm so sorry that I want to address each team individually. How dare I do such things to be able to talk about it from a betting angle as much as we can, and from a DFS perspective to talk about all the nuances of a 3-game slate. How dare I?
But do you have to copy paste it?
No. I give different lead-ins. I did different things. Chat, stand up for me.
Perhaps
Come on now.
Actually,
that's
Eric
a terrible
first.
idea. They're going to trash me. It's fine.
I should have started with Eric first. I flip-flop each one. And
But would you, Kayla, would you agree the intro to this question a little similar from team to team here?
Oh, wait till we get to the next segment. If you didn't like that, just you wait.
Greg, do you want to
I just thought we're ripping on Eric. I didn't know. I didn't know that we're supposed to talk about basketball too. But yeah, we could do that. So I think that Chris Paul is one of the stronger plays on the slate from a tournament purpose. Eric said it before. He looked healthy last game, and I expect that as we get further away from that initial injury he suffered, he's only get healthier and healthier. His price is down right now to relative to what it was at the start of the postseason. He's not picking up all that much ownership right now, at least not what I was expecting. He had 9 assists, 0 turnovers last game. I think that Chris Paul is one of the better tournament plays of the day. So give me him.
Eric sounds like his shirt looks. That's very strange. And I believe that we have no longer, hang on. You know what? I know Chad Freeland hangs out here, but you're gonna take a time out here. Actually, is what's going to happen.
Oh,
because
snap.
that is gendered. That is not something that I will tolerate here on this show. That pink is a beautiful color. This is salmon. This is pink.
Well, how do you know it wasn't a comment? How do you know
and I sound awesome.
How do you know that was a compliment?
Yeah, how do you know it wasn't a compliment? Maybe he looked at your shirt. He goes, "Boy, Eric's shirt is beautiful." he sounds like his shirt. And this guy is just he's like, he's a huge Eric fan. He's got posters on the wall.
Just like Greg, I'm taking a leap of faith and assuming that I understand where he was getting at. If not, it's just 5 minutes that he gets to think about what he says. And if he wants to clarify on the back end of it, go right ahead. But at the same time, I just feel like I just wanted to stick up for my ladies because I love pink. I think it's a great color on me. I feel great about it. Let's represent. Anywho, Suns, Chris Paul. I want some Chris Paul today. That's a strange thing to be saying out loud because I've been basically on the anti-Chris Paul train here for a while until game 4 where I was like, the ownership seems like it's low enough. We should maybe take some shots that if the shoulder's getting better, we should be there. He's 7,500 over on Fanduel. Different than the 6,700 he was a game ago, but that's what happens when you go out and throw down the way that he did. But over on DraftKings specifically, 6,600, that is a low number that I want to be over on.
Yeah, so I think there's where do people get the Eric posters? That's come up in the chat. I mean, I've seen them at posters. I've seen them at Hot Topic. Where else are Eric
the Disney
posters?
store.
Yeah, they come with Happy Meals. There's all different places to get Eric posters.
Oh yeah, I am a pretty human being. I can't help it.
Let's get those made.
Let's not. I don't even have an emoji. Can we have this discussion too? It's
Wait,
like, what
I
do I
thought
have
we did
to
a poll
do?
and everything. We didn't decide on one?
Nope, nothing. I guess there's the chalk. Go ahead and spam with chalk in the chat. Have fun with that. But I guess other than the chalk emoji, I don't have one. It's sad times.
Which one won your poll?
Well, I can't even remember anymore. I think it was the Kermit as Eric, but I do not recall. It's been so long. That's how long it's been since it was posed. But it's okay. I get it. I'm gonna just keep living my life. Keep the nose to the grindstone. I'll be all right. But yeah, there it is. Chalk. There's my emoji. I'm stoked about that one at least.
All right. Well, at least you have that.
Promo code chalk for 10% off Eric posters. Oh, Greg, you kill me. You must be a comedian.
Something of the hey, listen, not everything that I say in the YouTube chat is meant for the show. Like because I like to think that this is my space to be able to tell jokes about you that you don't see.
Spags chimed in. Spags is in the chat.
Oh, he says, the Kermit Eric emoji. There it is. Thank you. Much love. Much love. I also have Eric needs a Paul George emoji. I don't know if there will ever be a day where I'm not attached to Paul George at this point in time.
Love PG.
Yeah, me too, but not that day.
All right, friends, while we have you here, give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more, and Eric posters. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. It is now time for Awesemo Tells the Future. We asked this question to both Spags and Eric yesterday, so now it's Greg's turn, looking back at all the first-round series to this point. Have your opinions changed on who could come out of the East or West? Also, how about any title takes you might have? Greg, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so this is something Eric and I were talking about before the show, and I talked about it a little bit before. I don't really understand the futures odds on the Suns compared to the Lakers right now. So now that Anthony Davis is out, it's different from book to book, but more or less the Suns are around a minus 180 favorite to win the series against the Lakers. So we're looking at the Suns as, somewhere in the neighborhood of 65% chance to win this series, depending on the implied odds at different books. Yet, if you look at the futures odds, we had the Suns. They moved a little bit, but they were as high as 30-1 to win the finals at some books earlier. And, they're still now sitting over 20-1 basically everywhere. Whereas compared to the Lakers are 5-1, 6-1, 7-1. So it just doesn't make sense to me that we're looking at the Suns at over 20-1, whereas the Lakers are still one of the title favorites when these two teams are playing each other in the first round and the Suns are favored to win. So I have action on the Suns to win the championship right now. I have action on the Suns to win the Western Conference, dating from back before the season started. And I think that's the team with most sensible odds right now.
Yep, I'm right there with you. That was the team I talked about yesterday. And so I like that you're on board with me there too. They took the 5.5 or it was like 1.5, I think, when it was on the board. And Anthony Davis was basically said, hey, he's probably not going to play today yesterday. And I just went immediately to try to go bet it. Couldn't do it. And so I ended up settling for the plus 850 for them to win the West. It ended up getting up to like 9-1, as you said, for like a hot second later. But still a team that I think you should be investing in the West because they also don't have like a lot of difficulty going forward. If Chris Paul's going to be healthy here, and you're going to have no Anthony Davis. I mean, I think the reason that the Lakers have the odds that they do is just simply the name value, and that people like to bet the Lakers. People like to bet the name. Maybe they can capture some quote unquote stupid money. Might be something that they're trying to do there, but because there's probably so much more money wrapped up in the Lakers, they have a larger position for some of these books against the Lakers. They probably can just keep the number the same. People might still bet it, whereas other teams, they almost have to like encourage people to go bet there.
By the way, we have breaking news. Are you ready for this? Do you know what this is, Eric?
No, I haven't seen anything.
Joel Embiid is doubtful to play tomorrow.
Oh, crap. Okay. Well,
let's go Wizards.
All right. So we have
that line up.
It just came. That's the reason I found it curious. Is while we were talking, as we were talking, I was just looking up the odds, just for reference at a couple different places, and the odds came off while I was talking, and I was like, boy, that's odd. Something must have happened. And then I went to go look up the news, and Joel Embiid will not be playing tomorrow. Now, what does that mean for the rest of the series? I still have to think that the Sixers are going to win the series without too much issue. But going forward, if there's no Joel Embiid, that's a pretty big issue for Philly, obviously. Like, I think there's a chance that the Hawks could beat Philly if Joel Embiid was to be out for the series. It's just something I think we need a little bit more information on, but that's definitely concerning. And over-under saying the 76ers don't play today. I know, my friend. That's why I said tomorrow. But yeah, there's I think that there's a chance the Sixers are in some trouble right now.
Well, that sucks too, because yesterday I was talking through it, ended up betting some more on the Sixers because I want them out of the East as well. They don't have to, like, this Brooklyn-Milwaukee series that's impending. Like, that's going to be a really, really crazy series to be watching, and the Sixers got to avoid it. They're probably going to be playing the Hawks, and that's a much, much better spot to be in, but not if you don't have Joel Embiid. Got to say that. So, probably avoiding all things Sixers related at this point right now until we get more info.
I apologize for my initial reaction. I never want to be happy about an injury. I just was overcome with excitement for a second, but it's not funny.
That's okay. Sometimes we make mistakes, and that is okay. And you owned up to it, which is what matters.
All right, guys, anything else you want to add before we move on?
I feel good about that. And I'm, again, stoked that Greg's on board with the Suns.
All right. It's now time to head to the Diamond for Biggest Bet. Here are some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Miguel Sano plus 280, Austin Meadows plus 300, Rafael Devers plus 300, Matt Olson plus 300, Nelson Cruz plus 310. Greg, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so it's a little odd to me that Nelson Cruz has the longest odds of anybody that we have available here. If you look at just baseball lines for tonight, I mean, the Twins are the stone cold chalk of the slate. We've got the field rostering the Twins almost a 20% clip as a stack on DraftKings. If you look at the ownership projections for the top hitters in the Twins lineup, all of them are between 20 and 30% owned. Nelson Cruz is expected for almost 30% ownership tonight. So with that in mind, the field's playing Nelson Cruz at a pretty heavy clip in DFS, and I think he's going a little bit over-owned for that purpose. But for sports betting here, I think the 310 is probably a little bit too long.
If you're going to go play chalk Twins 5-man stacks, and I'm a Twins fan, so I'm just throwing it out there, I will not be playing the Twins today. But if you want to be playing DFS and just jam a bunch of Twins, I would just recommend taking that $100, that $200, whatever you'd be investing in DFS, and just play it on Nelson Cruz to hit a homer at plus 310. If that's going to be the odds that I get on him in Camden, 3-1 on your money with that. That seems like a lot more fun to me than trying to hit the right 5 guys. Cause looking up and down the rest of that lineup, it's a pretty watered down Twins lineup comparatively. And I know, as you said, they're the stone cold chalk. And I think that's pretty much because you're getting guys like Garlick in at 3K. You're getting Kirilloff under 4K on DraftKings still, which makes no sense to me. A guy who has a 60 out of 60 power score over on Fangraphs. But I would bet individually Nelson Cruz or Alex Kirilloff, Josh Donaldson. I'd rather, try to peg the one guy that I really like to hit a homer. That for me is definitely Nelson Cruz. So go do that instead of stacking them up. And Bruce Zimmerman, good luck.
And now for biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? We've got Tyler Glasnow, 8.5 strikeouts, Robbie Ray, 7.5, Marquez, 6.5, Nola, 6.5, Steven Strasburg, 6.5, Eric.
I'm an absolute stan. Like, I will just take Tyler Glasnow on 8.5 every single time, and twice on, what day is this? Tuesday. Twice on Tuesday, I will be taking Tyler Glasnow, keeping the ball. So he's not just pitching deep into games here, but a hard hit percentage right now, 46.7% EV. None of that really matters in terms of his strikeouts, which again, 36.2% K percentage this season. Phenomenal stuff. He's got that four-seamer that he's locating well, and then couples it with a couple of phenomenal pitches with a ton of vertical movement. I love Tyler Glasnow as a pitcher. He's always been one of my favorites. I will always be betting on him, especially against a Yankees team that obviously has some power, but obviously can strike out.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing with the Yankees lineup, because I'm going to agree with you with Tyler Glasnow, over 8.5, I think that's the one to go to here. The Yankees offense has not been particularly good this year. They have a below 100 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So we're looking at an offense, despite all the names that are in the lineup, marquee names, they've had a lot of injuries this year. And they've also had a bunch of other guys that have underperformed. Most notably overall, Gleyber Torres was once one of the best young middle infielders in baseball. And now he's just kind of a more or less average player at this point in his career. And the Yankees are not really getting production outside of guys like Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, DJ LeMahieu's been okay this year, although regressed a little bit from what we saw the last couple of years. So with that in mind, I mean, we've got a Yankees offense that doesn't look all that intimidating. And Tyler Glasnow, even in the outings where he does struggle, he strikes guys out. He has some of the best stuff in baseball. And I think over 8.5, the number should probably be like 9 or 9.5.
Yeah, I mean, the one game he struggled, period, was in that AAA ballpark. So I really kind of just write it off. I love Tyler Glasnow so much.
Oh, we know.
I literally think I've recommended him like 4 times on this show. Like every time he starts, it's like an auto. I'm going to talk about Tyler Glasnow.
All right. Switching gears now really quickly, though. People are freaking out. Fanduel, I guess, is down. I don't know what we're supposed to do about that.
We tell Jordan to fix it because Jordan's the producer. That's what he does.
How you gonna fix it? Fix it, fix it. No? Okay. We don't have the right
But
stat,
here's the other thing too, and I'll just ignore whatever it is that Eric did that I couldn't see. I'm sure I wouldn't have enjoyed it. But the other thing too is we have 2.5 hours now until NBA lock. We've got an hour and 55 minutes until baseball lock. I assume that FanDuel is going to be working by then. If not, they're going to refund everybody's money. But yeah, FanDuel is down. That seems to be a very frequent topic of conversation right now in the YouTube chat. But yes, it is down. No, none of us could do anything about it. But if you would like it to get fixed, follow at Eric Lindquist on Twitter and tweet at him.
God, I love you so much. See, and totally redeem yourself. There it is.
Oh, speaking of people tweeting at you, I thank you to our watchers out there for looking out. Viewers, watchers, what am I saying? Roscoe
there needs to be
said,
some context there.
Roscoe said, the new formula for Gas X Extra Strength tastes extra minty, so when you reflux, it's like you brushed your teeth. Thank you, Roscoe. Noted. Wow. I will look out for that.
Okay.
I think those are 2 separate issues. Reflux and gas are 2 totally different things.
They are.
We are going down a very interesting path.
They don't have to be.
We're going down an esophagus hole, technically.
And mine is on fire. Let's head to No House Advantage, prop or not. It's time for No House Advantages, prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key NBA players. Do you like the over under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Kyle Kuzma, 6.5 points. Greg.
Yeah, so, I mean, Kyle Kuzma, I'm not exactly sure what the Lakers starting lineup is going to be tonight, although I assume that Kyle Kuzma ultimately ends up in the starting lineup. I'm projecting to be in the starting lineup and play 34 minutes tonight. And as long as that's the case, I mean, even if he doesn't start, the number's still way too low because he's going to have to play extended minutes either way. But yeah, this is a very easy over on Kyle Kuzma just because we don't expect Anthony Davis to play. And whether they ultimately end up starting Kuzma, bring Kuzma off the bench, extra playing time, extra usage going there, easy over.
Yeah, he played 24 and 25 minutes the last 2, 12 and 11 shot attempts. Got to the line twice in each one of those. He doesn't really do a lot. I mean, he had a bunch of rebounds in that game 3 win that they had. And Drummond's been off the floor a little bit more than I kind of expected in this series matching up against Dayton, but that's neither here nor there. I guess Marc Gasol's been very good. That is helpful, but Kyle Kuzma is going to have to score the ball. There's really no question about it. I can't see a scenario where he doesn't play 24 plus minutes in this game, unless it were to just be a nuclear blowout and it's a complete bench clearing. No, there's no way that he's not playing over 24 minutes so long as he's healthy. So I like the over here big time.
Next, we've got Andre Drummond, 19.5 points. Eric, what are you taking?
Yeah, so we just talked about him here a second ago. I think that this is a pretty easy under. We're starting to see like Marc Gasol playing the lion's share of the minutes here. And now in the stead of Anthony Davis being out here, maybe Drummond can get a couple more minutes, but 19 is a pretty large number. And we're seeing a total right now hovering around 208, 207 for this game. That's not going to be a lot of points available. And if we're going to slot in LeBron James for 30 plus, which I think is probably a good thing to be doing, if he scores 30 in that, we're basically looking to allocate 65 points around the rest of this team or 70 points around the rest of this team. Drummond would have to get 19 of them. I don't think that that's extremely likely. DeAndre Ayton's been just excellent this entire season, both offensively, defensively. Tough matchup. I really think that the under here is a strong one, and that's definitely shown in our projections today.
Is that the right number?
Yes.
That seems so because that would be a fair number, maybe a little bit. If it was points plus rebounds, 19.5 would be a reasonable. That's actually really close to what I have Andre Drummond projected for today. 19.5 points. Let's see. When do you think is the last time he scored over 20 points?
I'm guessing it was he's done it with the Lakers. I think he did it. What was that game? Hands away from the computer. I'm remembering. It was beginning of May.
It was not.
He had 20 points. He had 20 points against. It was against Houston. Houston.
But
it was
the
after
last time
the
he
next
had
game.
Over 20 points was April 17th against Utah. That was one of the games where there was no Anthony Davis and no LeBron James. I mean, this is just the only thing I could think is that this was meant to be points plus rebounds that just got put in as points, because this is so far off from my expectations for Andre Drummond. Because like you said, even with Anthony Davis out, sure, I'm giving Drummond a couple extra minutes. There's probably more usage available for him. But I mean, overall for the series, he's averaging under 10 points per game. He's averaging 8.5 points per game this series. And now we're supposed to expect that, hey, he goes and scores 20 points now that Anthony Davis is out. I think the fair line here is probably 10.5. 19.5 is just egregiously high.
Noted. We'll
slot him in for 20 points right now. My God, just get ready for it. That'll be a disaster. By the way, we also have a 30-minute show after the Live Before Lock. We're going to be doing that. Spags and I teaming up to talk half an hour about NHA, about all of the goodies that they have going on over there. So check it out and definitely play the under on 19.5 for Drummond.
Definitely. Next, we've got Dario Saric, 11.5 points. Eric.
Dario Saric is basically playing like 11 to 15 minutes. He's playing the backup five here for one DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton's been on the floor a bunch. They've played a little bit alongside each other, but this is definitely another egregious line. We're kind of looking to be shorting everything. I think you can play points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers made, any of it. Actually, I would gear away. If there's one that I wouldn't play, it's definitely the three-pointers made, because if he comes out, hits 1-3 in the course of 15 minutes, oopsie. But the 11.5 points, that's almost like as good as it can possibly get. You would need a big blowout in this game. I don't think it blows out like crazy by any means, but it's going to be low scoring as is. And again, if I'm going to allocate 100 points, if we're looking at a total of 207, 208, and we're going to allocate 104 points for the Suns team, you're telling me that 10% of them are going to be scored by Dario Saric? I think not.
All right. So I totally agree with basically everything you said. The only thing I have Dario Saric playing 0 minutes tonight. He's been out of the Suns rotation the last 2 games. I don't see anything that's going to change to put him in the rotation for tonight. So I know at no house advantage, I'm in a state where I can't play no house advantage, but I'm familiar with how it works still. And I know that they do have a thing where if somebody is hurt and doesn't play, it's graded as a loss. You don't get a win. Do you still win if Dario Saric plays 0 minutes if he's not out with an injury?
Yes, because he's active.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that's what
the
rule
so he's
is,
my 10 point play of the day.
Okay. Yeah, I have Dario Saric playing 0 minutes tonight. So that zero everything across the board.
I've been playing 8 in the event that he randomly comes in. There's paths for him to get there, but that 8 is basically just a graceful 8. He's been out of the rotation for 2 games. He's played 11 and 15 in the other 2 of this series. There's no way that I could see him getting any kind of meaningful run here.
So then do you have Frank Kaminsky out of the rotation? Because those are basically the minutes I have for Kaminsky.
Yeah, I mean, I had Frank out for a second, and let me just pull it up. That would have been from my game 3 notes. So Yeah, I mean, it would be Kaminsky or him. Either way, you're not looking at them eclipsing 10 minutes in either direction for me. So you're seeing one of the two play the backup 5 minutes, but they're so low on the model that they would never in a million years show up in a lineup.
Is Frank Kaminsky the name of Meg Ryan's boyfriend and You've Got Mail?
You are asking the two wrong people for that one. Also, that came out of nowhere, and I love You've Got Mail. That was a great show. That was a great movie. Excuse me.
But yes, it's great.
I know, you know what I mean. The bookstore, the meet cute, oh no, he's the big bad bookstore guy.
I wanted to be you so badly.
Wait, why is Eric the wrong person to ask? Is he not the perfect person to ask that question? You're like, I would have no clue.
I don't know. That's why
I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah,
but I'm not going to know with the dude's name. I'm going to tell you the entire plot and the conflict and the fact that, Tom Hanks has the kid that is running around doing whatever. And
FOX.
Oh my God, FOX. Oh, that was the great scene where they're at the dinner. Okay, I know way more about that movie than when I was leading on, apparently.
I just IMDb'd. It's Frank Nowitzki.
That's very close. Wow. Frank Kaminsky, Kentucky killer, if anything. Him and Sam Decker, Wisconsin, Final Four. What up?
What up? All right. That's going to do it for NHA. Don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. Download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Also, NHA is doing their first showdown contest tonight for Lakers versus Suns. They also have a new lineup builder feature to help make the process of mass multi-entering quick and easy. You can choose a contest, pick your favorite player prop, set the distribution ranges, and generate lineups instantly. So check that out and help you beat your friends, not the house, win big with player props today. That'll lead us right into Good Dog, Bad Dog. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog, and betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight, and who's a bad one? Greg, give us your good dog.
Well, first of all, that Jordan sound effect's working. I was like, that caught me off guard because usually it's usually there's like a half woof and the second dog like dies or something like that. But yeah, like we heard the sound effects loud and clear there. So that was pretty cool. But good dog of the day, I'm going to go with the Portland Trailblazers. Just the Nuggets are dealing with so many injuries right now. And it's not to say that I think this is a massively one-sided game, but the Blazers getting points in this spot when we have the Nuggets with no Will Barton, no PJ Dozier, no Jamal Murray. We've seen that outside of Nikola Jokic, they're really struggling to generate offense in this series. Michael Porter Jr. Has struggled. I do think he's going to play better going forward, but hasn't been the case so far this series. So everything's kind of on Jokic, whereas on the Blazers side, they just have more guys that could get it done right now. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Jusuf Nurkic, he's healthy and playing extended minutes in the playoffs. Now, Norman Powell, that was a big addition for them at the trade deadline. So I like the Blazers underdogs, just a deeper and better team right now, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you. I have the exact same good dog. I think if you just look at the rosters, I did the same thing where if you just write off LeBron James and you go through the rest of the Lakers roster, there's really no reason that I would want to be going to bet on them. I think the same thing applies here when you look at Denver. If you take Jokic out, you go to Michael Porter Jr., who's just been really, really bad here and has been kind of keyed in on by both Norman Powell and Covington here. I expect Porter Jr. to start playing better, but still just hasn't been up to par. And then it gets thin. It gets so thin between Monty Morris, being kind of a guy being relied on for backup scoring, for Facundo Campazzo being, playing large, meaningful minutes, like not a scorer by any means. Like it's just a team that I want to be shorting here at this point in time. And as you said, Portland just got done obliterating them. We've had 3 really wonky games this series, but I think Portland could really run away with this one too.
Eric, right back to you for your bad dog.
Yeah, so bad dog, I think everybody knows at this point, I'm going to be shorting LeBron James and the Lakers, which feels disgusting. It feels awful. But if you head over to OddsShopper right now, there's a number of 4.5s floating around at a couple books. You got to get in on 4.5. I think when it was at 5.5 and 5, I think you could go back and forth and figure out what you wanted to do there. But people are starting to take the Lakers side of it, and that line's coming down. I really do want to get on 4.5. I think that Chris Paul looked good enough to me to be effective. And as I said, I think that they have the second, third, fourth, and maybe fifth best players on the floor tonight. So I'm going to take the Phoenix side.
So I don't disagree with Eric, but just in the interest of mixing it up, I went and pulled up some baseball odds, and we have the Yankees basically in a pick'em game against the Tampa Bay Rays. I think the Rays with Tyler Glasnow on the mound and some of the struggles we talked about with the Yankees offense earlier, WRC plus under 100 against right-handed pitching. I think the Rays should be a somewhat significant favorite in this spot against the Yankees, at least minus 150 or minus 160. So just the fact the Yankees are only even odds in this spot, to me, that's going to be my bad dog.
All right. It is now time for make or break. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Greg?
The Phoenix Suns, the health of Chris Paul. And then also on the other side, I'm going to be pretty heavy on LeBron James tonight. So there's a lot of stuff going on here because I want Chris Paul to have a good game for a fantasy perspective. I want LeBron James to have a good fantasy game, but I also want the Suns to win because that's something that's going to be very important to me in terms of some of the futures bets I have going on. So I want LeBron to play well enough, but not well enough to win the game outright.
You have a lot of wants today.
Yeah, I that's the story of my life. A lot of wants, a lot of needs, and not a lot of haves.
Jason Tatum for me. I need Jason Tatum to go nuts tonight. I felt like my lineups were really on it. If I had gotten onto more Robin Lopez, I could have had a couple of sneaky ones, but Joel Embiid obviously sunk my battleship very, very early on in a lot of places. And I'm not going to get too upset about that. I felt like other than that play, I felt pretty good about my exposures and what I had going. So not going to try to change too much. I think Jason Tatum is going to play big minutes. There's no reason that they don't have to let him just go out and chuck the entire game. And maybe he has a poor shooting night, but even if he does, he can go 10 for 35. That's a realistic outcome. So I look forward to having all the Jason Tatum ride with me.
And last but not least, our fade of the day. Eric, is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public?
Kyrie Irving.
All right.
Let's see.
Well, yeah, Kyrie Irving. So, I mean, he's coming in like fractionally lower owned. So he's right around 20% bull sites. I believe he was 20% on Draftkings over on Fanduel. I spoke to it the other day and obviously all three of those guys went for a crazy game, but on Fanduel right now, he's 9,600 and he's coming in around 30+%. I am spreading that around. And again, it's a very thin point guard position, but I would rather have more Dame, more Chris Paul, and less Kyrie Irving. I'm right now, if the slate were to start this second, I would be under 10% on Kyrie Irving on both sites.
I'm going to say campaign just because I'm seeing people ring up in the YouTube chat right now. And I've said I think Chris Paul is healthy right now. Eric said he thinks that Chris Paul is healthy right now, or at least healthier than he was earlier. But I mean, still, last game, 9 assists, 0 turnovers. Those are all pretty good signs. And campaign and Chris Paul, they don't share a massive amount of time on the court together. So if we look at what the expectation is going to be for the Suns tonight, campaign went out. He played 33 minutes in that one game that Chris Paul wasn't able to finish. But last game, his playing time went down to 25 minutes. And now that campaign's minutes, his price is up a little bit and the minutes are on the decline. I think that he's somebody to be off of. And just basically saying, like, 'cause I saw one person mention him in the YouTube chat.
Love it. Love it. Guys, fun show today. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your insight.
Campaign in the membrane. There it is. Just to finish it out.
And we're done here. All right. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Locker coming your way next on the same stream. So stay tuned. I'm Kayla Knierim. We'll see you guys tomorrow here on the Tip Off.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran on Twitter at Laffy_D, joined by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS, breaking down a 3-game slate on a Tuesday night. Boston, Brooklyn, Portland, Denver, Lakers. Doesn't look like we're going to have Anthony Davis tonight. On the road in the desert against the Suns. It's kind of a fun one, just given that it's a little bit different from what we've seen with these teams before based on injuries.
Yeah, I've been enjoying these preseason or postseason slates in general anyway. And then, yeah, like you said, at least, now you're getting a little bit of a different look in some of these games. So, yeah, it should be another fun one.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, you've got not just Anthony Davis, technically questionable, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but Davis – Frank Vogel has changed his tune on that, right? Doubtful, and maybe he'll play. He's a little bit more optimistic. You can't say the same in Boston, right? Because Kemba Walker is actually officially listed as doubtful. So is Robert Williams. They're 12.5-point dogs. That game, the only way that they can bring this to a 3-2 series and not make reservations for the golf course is if Jason Tatum scores like 60 tonight. And even that might not be enough.
Yeah, pretty dire spot for Boston. I mean, they obviously already had their work cut out for them. Then they lost Jaylen Brown. Then they also lose Kemba and Robert Williams. It's obviously the game on the slate with the biggest blowout potential, 12.5-point total right now. But like you said, if they are able to make this a competitive game, you definitely know where those points are coming from.
So your Washington Wizards, all they needed was some heavy Ben Simmons foul trouble, Joel Embiid injury in the first quarter, and they're bringing it to game 5, baby.
And the worst 3-point shooter on the team to actually make some threes.
Yeah, he did. He actually did, and then he got hurt. And now he's done for 6 weeks. That's tough, dude. They're going to need him for that Eastern Conference final push.
Well, I mean, I messaged you earlier today, and as much as I rag on Bertans, for the Wizards to have any chance at winning games, they need him to play well. So as much as I rag on him, him being hurt is the final blow to this team.
It's funny. You're not wrong at all about that. It's one of those scenarios where it's easy to make fun of him when he plays as poorly as he has, but when he's making shots, he's actually keeping this team somewhat competitive.
Yeah, the reason it pisses me off so much when he plays bad is because if he actually played well, they would have a chance. You know what pisses me off? Is the fact that somehow Russell Westbrook was getting accolades after yesterday's performance. Why wouldn't he?
Why would he?
I mean, it's 72 fantasy points.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. So the fantasy points are all that matters.
Yeah, that's all I care about.
He shot 3 for 19 from the field.
That's not great.
3 for 19. Now, he did go 13 for 16 from the charity stripe, which is pretty strange for Russell Westbrook. I'll give him that. Strange. But 3 for 19, man, that is tough. 0 for 4 from 3. That was a god-awful shooting performance from Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, and like you said, it was overshadowed a bit by the fact he actually made free throws.
Sure, yeah, but no Joel Embiid, no Ben Simmons for large stretches of that game. Maybe I'm just salty because I wanted to sweep. And now Joel Embiid is doubtful for game 5. So at this stage of the game, we're in limbo. You and I both said right after that happened, we both very much expected to get a notification. Joel Embiid returns to the bench to start the second quarter.
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to come back in that game. I was fully expecting him to not even miss a rotation.
And now he's doubtful. So I have no idea what's going on. Maybe they're playing it safe. Doc Rivers, though, with a 3-1 lead, it's never safe. No one's blown more 3-1 leads than Doc Rivers in the history of the NBA.
Well, and the weird thing, too, is he fell on his butt and then left the game with a knee injury.
And he also was holding his back after he fell.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. It's too much for me to handle, but that game's not on the slate. We got 3 today, so we're going to break all of them down one by one, go over all the key factors, important points from each one of these games, and leave no stone unturned here on the Deeper Dive. But first, happy to have everybody with us. Hit that thumbs up. Don't forget to do that. If you haven't done so yet, it helps us a ton. Make it the first thing you do, right? Save us some pride here. We've got, nice, 1,200 people watching just to kick this one off, coming in from the tip-off and joining us, maybe coming home from work. Subscribe to the channel, too. We're at 55,200 subscribers. Hopefully, we continue to make that push upward, continue to grow the channel. Thanks to everybody that watches every single day and has become a part of this fantastic community. Ready to do this?
Yep, let's go.
All right. Before we get to the first game, same question as always. How are you approaching this one? Is this more of a stars and scrubs slate based on what we're dealing with the injuries, or are these guys priced appropriately?
I think it's kind of a mix because you do have guys to pay up for. I mean, you have Harden, you have Durant, you have Jokic, you have LeBron, you have Tatum. So there's guys to pay up for. I would expect that you're getting like at least one of those guys in most lineups. There is cheap value that you can look to, but it's certainly not safe. And that's something that you've seen all postseason long, where when you're relying on guys off the bench, if the game ends up being close to the end, you typically kind of get fewer minutes than you were hoping for from those guys. But there's also a very strong mid-range. Once again, we have a slate with Yusuf Nurkic and DeAndre Ayton at the center position, both playing, really well from a fantasy standpoint. So I think there's actually a variety of ways that we can go today.
Would you say there are any top tier options that stand out far above the rest on a night where you have Harden, Jokic, Durant, Tatum, and LeBron with likely no Anthony Davis?
I would say Jokic, but the position is so deep that the opportunity cost is really high. So when you factor that in, I don't really think that there's any one that stands out. Like obviously Tatum, I guess is in the conversation as well. The power forward position is pretty bad. And if this game is competitive, Tatum probably has another 70 fantasy points, but you are running that pretty significant risk that, this game doesn't really come down to the wire.
All right. Well, let's talk about Jason Tatum. The Boston Celtics going back to Brooklyn here. 235 total. This has crept up several points throughout the day. They're 12.5-point dogs, though, on the road, and it's not looking good for them. You had no Jaylen Brown to start the postseason already. Kemba Walker's doubtful. Robert Williams is doubtful. Now it all comes down to Jason Tatum. We'll get to Smart, Evan Fournier, Thompson, and guys like Peyton Pritchard who should fill a decent amount of playing time in Kemba's absence. But if this game stays close, we mentioned it at the top, Jason Tatum's going to have to go bonkers like we've seen him do. He had a 50-point game. He dropped 40 points the very next day, and they still lost by 15. So the one good thing I love is that I don't see how Brad Stevens doesn't give him 40 minutes no matter what the score is. He played 40 minutes, and they were down 28 points in the third quarter last game. Yeah,
exactly. And that's something I was going to say is that while there is blowout risk here, you have to keep in mind, I mean, this is an elimination playoff game for Boston. There's no real reason. Like if, let's say it's a 23-point game after three quarters, there's no real reason for Jason Tatum not to be on the floor to start the fourth and try and bring them back. This isn't a regular season game. This isn't even, game 3 where they can just rest and come back for game 4. There's really no reason. It's really hard to envision a score where Jason Tatum doesn't at least play 7 or 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. So that does make him a little bit safer. And, like you said, still, around 40 minutes, I think is a reasonable expectation. You certainly could see more if this game does come down to the wire.
Listen, Tatum essentially closed last game out, aside from a less than 1 minute stint that the back of the bench got. And that game was not close. So yeah, there's nothing to suggest that we won't see that happen again today. It's really just tough not to love him here, Adam. And, we talk about the minutes. There's so many other things to get into when it comes to Jason Tatum, but it's 10-8 on FanDuel. So he's second highest priced player, only $300 behind James Harden. But on DraftKings, he's 10,000. He's cheaper than Harden, Jokic, Durant, and all three of those guys. Marginal difference here, but there's just they're dropping like flies in Boston, and good playoff teams have good players around them. Right now, Tatum's the one guy that doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And he's played a lot of minutes actually this year. He's played 759 minutes without Kemba or Jaylen Brown on the floor. He's averaged 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. He's got a 36% usage rate, 23% assist percentage. So, the production's been there. Overall in this series, he's averaged 1.38 fantasy points per minute, 2 pretty bad games to start and then 2 really good games to follow it up. But yeah, I mean, there's not really, I don't think there's much of an argument against Tatum when you factor in the position and you factor in that it's just really unlikely he loses that many minutes regardless of what the score is, I think. So that stuff, makes me lean towards Tatum. It does feel kind of scary. We haven't projected as the highest owned guy on DraftKings. It feels kind of scary to be paying $10K for the highest owned guy on the slate who is on a team that's a 12.5-point underdog. But for the reasons we mentioned before, I'm still not that concerned about it, even though it doesn't feel great.
Extenuating circumstances for sure. Fournier's played 233 minutes without Walker and Brown this year, 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. He's got a usage rate coming in at 20% even. It's it's still tough, even with some of these underwhelming rates, I should say. It's tough not to like Evan Fournier here. What are you doing with Fournier at his current price point, given that Walker's doubtful?
I think he looks better on Fanduel than he does on Draftkings. 6,200 on Draftkings. He's still certainly capable of doing well, but he has really struggled in the postseason. We saw him play better at the end of the regular season, but he's gone back to struggling in the postseason. And then, like you said, 233 minutes without Kemba or Brown on the floor. He's averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute. So it's tough to get excited about him, but I do think that on Fanduel, where he's a $5,500 small forward, obviously roster construction is a little bit different there. He's going to look a little bit better because, if this game is close, you should get upper 30s from Fournier.
I wouldn't say I love him from a DFS standpoint. It's 6,200 on DraftKings, like you mentioned, but over 16.5 points does look nice here, just because they're legitimately running out of warm bodies at this point, at least guys that can score. Tristan Thompson's not someone to take usage away from you. Marcus Smart's likely going to see some elevated usage in this game, but Evan Fournier should be second in line behind Jason Tatum. And I also just pulled up our player prop tool, totally free over at Awesemo. We have him at an 18.25 point projection with a prop of 16.5. So, that's solid right there. I still like over 16.5, even if you don't love him for DFS, because I don't have to worry about what he does or doesn't do from a peripheral standpoint either.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What are you doing with Marcus Smart?
Yeah, I think Smart looks better to me than Fournier because I just expect more in the way of peripherals. In the minutes he's played with Tatum on the floor and without Walker and Brown this year, he's got a 20.5% usage rate. He also has a 27.5% assist percentage. You just get more ball handling responsibilities from Smart, more time running the point without Kemba. And he only played about 33 minutes last game, but I have a hard time thinking he doesn't play more here. I'm expecting him to get at least 36, and if the game's close, he's probably getting 40 plus. So I think Smart still looks pretty good at his salary with, the increased peripherals and the increased usage that you can expect without Kemba.
Brandon Merrick says on No House Advantage, you put your best bet at the top, right? Yeah, the one you're most confident in gets the most points. Peer-to-peer player prop platform over there at No House Advantage. Perfect time to tell you, if you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, you'll get $20 upon your first deposit when you sign up. And I talk about that free player prop tool over at Awesemo.com. Well, we have the free No House Advantage player prop tool, which is huge, taking our projections, putting them up against, so you can see them up against what you've got going on at No House Advantage, where the lines are static. They don't change throughout the day, no matter how much money or action comes in on them on other books. So you can hit stale lines. You can take advantage of that. Use the free tool, use the free optimal lineups page, and get that promo code. Use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up, when you sign up, use a deposit and get $20 when you do so. But yeah, if I'm putting one at the top today on No House Advantage, I definitely like over 16.5 points on Evan Fournier. I just think there's going to be enough opportunity that if he doesn't get there, it's going to be because he shoots like shit. But I'm willing to take that any day of the week if the volume's there and I lose. So
yeah, I like it. I don't think I like it quite as much as you. I have him at like 17.7 points.
7.7. Yeah, that's fair. But, when you look at a lot of these props, they're going to be even tighter than that. The problem is when I look at, here's my thing, right? I look at him, I say only 20% usage, 0.84 DraftKings points per minute in 233 minutes without Jaylen Brown and Kemba Walker on the floor. But 233 minutes just simply isn't enough for me to look at the rest of this team with these guys out and think that Evan Fournier is not going to see elevated opportunity tonight. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but like Tatum is just going to take so many shots.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. But dude, even when you do take as many shots as Tatum takes, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he takes 30. I don't know. It's possible. Like 30 shots from Tatum is very possible. But
yeah, Smart's going to get some threes as well.
Do you think anybody else here in the starting lineup is viable?
Yeah, I think Tristan Thompson is a pretty interesting option, especially in tournaments. This is someone that was really, really popular last game because he had a really good game 2 games ago. Robert Williams got hurt. Thompson played really well, posted a big double-double. Last game, he only played 22 minutes, but he missed his final rotation. He didn't play the fourth quarter of that game. I think that, he played about 16 minutes in the first half. If this game is remotely close, I expect that you do get around 30 minutes from Tristan Thompson. We know that this is a team that will give up, that can struggle on the boards. He had a lot of success 2 games ago on the offensive glass, getting putbacks. So I think that the ownership right now, we haven't projected around 9% on DraftKings. To me, it's kind of an overreaction because he had a really bad game last time out, hurt a large percentage of the field, but there's nothing really different in, tonight than there was last game when he was one of the most popular guys on the slate.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess the only thing is with this price. Okay, so let me. This would be a better thing to ask, right? You said what's he 5,500 on DraftKings?
Yeah.
So at that price point, he played 22 minutes last game. How much of that do you think was the result of the blowout?
Most of it,
because he only played midway through the fourth or third quarter and picked up his 4th foul. I don't honestly know how much that means 6+ minutes into it, but are you giving him closing minutes in 30 minutes tonight if Robert Williams is out?
Yeah. I think if this game's close, Thompson closes because, he doesn't have to. Like, they could go Grant Williams. I think it partly depends on how he plays. But, you saw him get closing minutes 2 games ago, and I think that there's a good chance he gets them tonight, assuming he's playing well. And if he's not playing well, then it's kind of a moot point.
So the reason I ask that is because if you think Thompson closes and he sees, full additional rotation from last game where there was a blowout and not all starters got those minutes, then you should definitely like him at that price point, specifically at 9% ownership. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, like, the game Boston won, the game where Thompson, had a really big game. The Nets closed with that same small lineup that they've been going with. They had Harden, Irving, Harris, Durant, and Bruce Brown on the floor. And Tristan Thompson played almost the entire 4th quarter.
What are your thoughts on Peyton Pritchard down there at the bottom of the player pool?
Yeah, he's one of the guys that I was alluding to at the top where I said that there's definitely some cheap value you can look to that probably isn't quite as safe as some people are going to give it credit for. On FanDuel, I think it's really tough to get there, but he's still 3,200 on DraftKings, which looks good. He played 24 minutes last game. The concern is that he played about 9 minutes in the first half, and then he got some extra run in that 4th quarter where the game wasn't competitive. It's not a huge concern because at 3,200, even if he plays like 18 to 20 minutes, he's probably going to give you a good enough, production for his salary. And there's certainly a chance that he gets extended run tonight for one reason or another. The game's out of hand. Tristan Thompson's in foul trouble, not playing well, whatever. There's a variety of ways for Pritchard to get back to those 24 minutes. I don't think that he should be projected for 24 minutes, but it's certainly still in the range of outcomes. And I think that at 3,200, the risk isn't that high because he can get there even if he does play 18 to 20.
What about Neesmith?
I don't really see it there. He played 1 minute and 34 seconds in the first half. He played a ton in garbage time. He's not a particularly productive player anyway. That feels more thin to me. Like, if I were going to go that route, I think I would rather do it with Jabari Parker because Parker actually produces at a pretty high rate. It's a similar thing. Parker played 3 minutes and 22 seconds in the first half, played almost the entire 4th quarter plus the last few minutes of the 3rd. So he ended up at 17 minutes, but you can see that a lot of that came in garbage time. But he's someone where, they could run the rotation a little bit differently for whatever reason and get Parker more minutes. And he's more likely to do stuff with those minutes, I think, than Neesmith is.
Not to mention, it's also entirely possible that there is plenty of garbage time tonight too. Now,
yeah, for sure.
Again, it was weird because Marcus Smart, and Jason Tatum played through that, and Romeo Langford actually came in to close out the game in the final minute, but Evan Fournier and Tristan Thompson didn't. So that would be my only concern. If it is a blowout, there's nothing to suggest that we're definitely going to see the same thing happen where Fournier and Thompson sit and Langford plays weird minutes in the 4th, but Marcus Smart and Tatum close it out. There's nothing to say that's going to definitely happen.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that I think you want to bank on. To me, the best way to look at it is just it just gives you more outs, kind of like Pritchard. If Pritchard does only play 18 minutes, you're not going to be thrilled, but you'll probably be okay. But there's just a variety of ways he can get more minutes, and a change in the rotations. Like, he can play minutes over Langford. He can play in garbage time. He can play minutes over Thompson if they go small. Like, there's still just a lot of different ways that you can get more minutes for some of these guys.
All right. And I have to ask you, Romeo Langford is like a 0.5 per minute guy this season. Any interest there?
No, if I were playing 150 lineups, I probably have a little bit just because he's 3,300 and starting and can play close to 30 minutes. But if we're talking about, smaller fields or trying to, not play 150 lineups where on a 3-game slate, you're going to have exposure to most reasonable plays, I'm cutting Langford out pretty quickly.
All right, let's talk about Brooklyn then on the other side of this one. We had a lot to get through with Boston, not as much with Brooklyn, but an interesting team nonetheless. You have Harden, Durant, Kyrie Irving coming into coming into an elimination game. And I can't help but think that James Harden. So with Harden, Durant, and Irving on the floor this year, Harden has a very low usage rate, but assist rates through the roof. In this series, Harden has a 27.5% usage rate, I think, 45% assist rate, 11% rebound rate, and north of 1.5 fantasy points per minute. So, yeah, he's playing alongside two excellent players, but this dude has had no shortage of big games already. He's producing, and this is exactly what you anticipate from him. He's not getting to the line as consistently, but still some double-digit free throw games. Like, Harden could easily go out there and give us another big triple-double today, or a huge points assist double-double with a bunch of stocks. I guess the question is, where do you prioritize him ahead or behind guys like Jokic and Tatum?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a little behind those guys, but it's not by a wide margin. I think what you pointed out with the usage rate in this series is really important, because if you look at the games he played with Durant and with Irving during the regular season, he only had about a 20% usage rate. But that's something that, you kind of just have to use common sense when you think about stuff. Like, you look at that and you're just like, there's no way going forward over more games James Harden just has a 20% usage rate with these guys on the floor. And you've seen him step it up in the playoffs. I think it's around 26%, but I don't have it in front of me. But either way, you've seen a big jump in his usage rate. He's averaged 1.59 DraftKings points per minute, has a 45% assist percentage, leading the team by a huge margin in potential assists in this series. So he's looked really good. You've seen him step up as you would expect. You basically Harden and Durant running things for Brooklyn, Irving being a very good third wheel, basically. So it does, make me feel good about Harden. I think that he does rank a little bit lower than guys like Tatum and Jokic, just because he does still have to compete with guys like Durant and Irving. But it's kind of splitting hairs at the top, I think. Sure.
And I'll point this last thing out. It's not crazy to think that it's 26.6, by the way. So round up to 27. Durant's at 34%. Irving's been the odd man out here, 25.6. I say that because he's not going to contribute much in other categories either. But outside of that, the highest usage player has been Joe Harris at 14%. So yeah, it's tough to share the ball with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. But in the same breath, like, there's literally nobody else out there that you're sharing the ball with anyway. So if Harden's getting a decent amount of minutes with only one of them on, the potential for the big games is still very much there, and we can't ignore that.
Yeah, for sure. And, assuming the game's relatively close, he's probably playing 40 minutes. I do think that, I guess in some ways, the minute concerns, like the blowout concerns, I should say, are a little bit higher to me on Brooklyn than Boston, because they at least have an incentive to say, like, it would be really nice if, we don't have to bring James Harden back in, kind of thing, since
Sure.
they will have, more games. But at the same time, if they're blowing out the Celtics, then we know that they scored a lot of points in a hurry. So still not a huge concern.
They're also going to get a nice little break if they win this game. So
Right. Yeah.
Not too much to worry about. Talk to me about your approach with Durant and Kyrie Irving today, because I think to me, Harden is the most appealing, and ownership dictates that right now as well.
I think Harden and Durant are pretty close. You mentioned, Durant's usage rate being the highest out of this group by a pretty wide
34%.
margin. He's playing similar minutes. So I think he's really, really close to Harden. You're getting a little bit more ownership going to Harden, which makes me kind of interested a little bit more in Durant in tournaments, just because of that ownership difference. But I think that those two are really close. Irving is really, really tough for me to prioritize here, especially because right now we have him projected as the seventh or eighth highest owned guy on DraftKings. He's coming off of a big game last time out, but for one, he had 11 rebounds in that game, which you're not counting on Kyrie Irving, typically doubling with rebounds. He's third on the team in this series with potential assists with 5.3 per game. Durant's at 5.8, Harden's up around 15. You're just not seeing that, the playmaking from Kyrie Irving. And that's something that goes back to the regular season where they basically said, okay, James Harden's the point guard, Kyrie Irving's the two guard. And from that point on, you've just seen Harden dominate the assists. So you basically have a scoring dependent player at 8,800. Granted, he's a very good scorer and a very good player, so you do get that upside. But coming off of a big game, and people seemingly going back to him, that's a spot where I think I'd rather go to some other guys and just hope that we get back to Harden and Durant carrying the load and Irving kind of taking a backseat.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up potential assists, because it's more helpful, especially when you're talking about a only 4 games in the series so far. But it's crazy because Harden has a 45% assist rate. The next closest on the entire team is Kevin Durant at 13.8, Blake Griffin at 11.5, Jeff Green at 11.5, Kyrie Irving 10.8. So like that's a huge drop off in assist rate, all the way down to 14% Kevin Durant, 10.8 for Kyrie Irving. It's hard to rely on assists there. But Kevin Durant is averaging 3 3/4 stocks per game in this series. Like his peripherals have made him so reliable that his floor has become pretty monstrous.
Yeah, and I mean, you can count on his rebounding numbers more than you can count on Kyrie as well. Like if you look at the series, his rebounding percentage is only a point or two higher than Irving's. But again, you're talking about 4 games, and you know who these guys are. Like Durant is most likely going to out rebound Irving going forward.
What are you doing with the rest of Brooklyn, if anything?
Not too much. I mean, I think you can take a look at guys like Joe Harris at 5,100. It's still a reasonable price point. Bruce Brown is a cheap guy that if you're playing a bunch of tournament lineups, you can mix in the sum because he played about 14 minutes a couple games ago, but last game played 23 or 24. Still was a really weird rotation that doesn't make me very comfortable, though. He subbed in like late in the first half. He subbed in with 8 minutes to go in the second quarter, played the rest of the quarter. That was 2 games ago. But last game, I don't know where that game went, but he subbed in late, ended up playing 24 minutes. It was still a concerning rotation, I think. So at 3,500 for Bruce Brown, there is a path to success, kind of like we talked about with the guys on Boston, but I don't feel very good about it. Blake Griffin's not really doing much of anything in terms of scoring, rebounding. You're probably getting 24 minutes or so in a competitive game at 4,200, but I think that's a pretty tough one to get behind. So I'm outside of the big 3. I think Harris and then taking some shots on Bruce Brown.
Okay. 1 down, 2 to go. Portland and Denver. Remember, we put free content up on the site today. It's premium content, but we put it in front of paywall. NBA Big Board today is free. MLB player projections, PGA Top Golfer Tool, NHL player rankings, all of that totally free if you want to check it out. If you want to see everything else we have, go to awesemo.com/join. Ownership projections, you hear us reference them all the time. The Boomer Bust Tool with the optimal lineup percentage on it. The Top Stack Tool. There's so much player projections, the lineup builder, the fantasy cruncher add-on is huge. All of that stuff at awesemo.com. And if you want it for basketball, baseball, football, hockey, golf, MMA, NASCAR, doesn't matter. We've got the same tools, the best tools you're going to find for all of those, created and used by Alex Baker himself. Awesemo, #1 ranked DFS player out there. And you see those avatars up top quite a bit lately using these same tools we reference and talk about on the show. Weekly, monthly, annual, doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do, whether you want to do less than $5 for the express pass on the week, single sport, every sport, whatever it is. Fantasy Cruncher add-on, no add-on. Check it out. Awesemo.com/join. And if you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm happy to answer them. My DMs are open. Oh, and last thing, join the premium Slack chat. People always forget to do that. When you come in, you get a subscription. Take advantage of that community. Take advantage of office hours where you got the pros at Awesemo answering your questions and helping you, refine your game. All of that super valuable stuff. Take advantage of the whole package when you sign up. All right, Portland and Denver. We'll kick it off with the Blazers. I asked Josh on the strategy show today, 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Sunday. Great show. Check it out. You will not regret it. If I told you that the Blazers won by 20 points and Damian Lillard shot 1 for 10 with 10 points, you probably wouldn't believe me. And if you did believe me, you'd be like, well, McCollum must have dropped 40.
Yeah, no, Norman Powell.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's the crazy part about all of this. But playoff basketball is weird, man. Are you going back to Damian Lillard today?
Yeah, I still think the price is reasonable, especially at 9,600 on DraftKings. If I can get to, Jokic or Tatum or Harden or Durant, I prefer that. But Damian Lillard being a consolation prize at 9,600 isn't a really bad spot to land. He's got a 32+% usage rate in this series. During the regular season in games he played with Nurkic and McCollum, he was at about 30%. His assist percentage in this series is at 40%. In the first 3 games, the ones that weren't blowouts, you got at least 40 minutes in each game. So no real concerns here with Lillard. I mean, he shot poorly. He still had an okay game because he got there with assists. But no concerns here with Lillard. I think that, he's still the guy that you expect to carry the load for Portland.
Appreciate that, Carl Michael. We don't have any Publix around here, though. Do you have Publix around you?
I'm not sure. Because I've seen it, but I can't remember, if I saw them in South Carolina or Maryland or Missouri or other places I've lived.
Around my way, I go to the Giant formerly known as Clemens.
Yeah, we have Giant.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Giant, Harris Teeter, Whole Foods.
Acme.
No.
Do you know what Wawa is?
Yeah.
Okay. I've talked to a lot of West Coast people, and they have no idea what it is at all.
Pretty sure it's an East Coast thing.
It is an East Coast thing. Yeah. They actually just recently expanded down the East Coast. But when I was younger, I had no idea. I was like, oh, you've never had a turkey gobbler? It's the greatest thing ever made. Did you watch Mayor of Easttown yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, all right.
It's
They're
on the
drinking
list.
Wawa coffees in it, and it's just so funny because it's like it takes place probably 30, 40 minutes from where I live, or at least supposed to. I'm not necessarily sure exactly where they filmed everything. Good show. Check it out. All right. What about McCollum and Nurkic and Norman Powell? These are the three guys that I feel like we don't get to them very frequently. Maybe one of them ends up winning us a tournament at some point, just because, generally speaking, not a ton of people go there. I want to start with Nurkic just because of that price point. You and I had been just hammering Nurkic at those discounts, but he's still getting a little ownership, but that price point has come up pretty significantly on DraftKings over the past little while.
Yeah, I mean, I think 7,100 is still fine for him. The thing is that, you know, the playing time, he's averaged a little bit less than 30 minutes per game in the series. But if you look at the rotations and everything, you can see how high the ceiling is and how high the playing time ceiling is, because he fouled out twice, once in 25 minutes, once in about 32 minutes, played 33 minutes in another game. And then last game, you had the blowout. So you haven't seen a game yet where it's actually competitive and he's not in foul trouble. Not to say that happens tonight. I mean, he obviously has to deal with Nikola Jokic, so fouls are going to happen. But I think there is a path to 34 plus minutes from Nurkic. And even if you get 30 or 31 at 7,100, I still think he's a pretty strong option. He's averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute in the series, over 1.3 during the regular season. So I'm still interested in Nurkic here.
The only thing that I don't love, excuse me, is, last year he only played 8 games. He had was that the ankle injury? God. Was that the ankle injury year where he got stomped on, or was that wrist?
I don't remember.
Me neither. I think the ankle injury year was before. You remember the ref actually appearing as though he stomped on him, which he didn't, but it was, real strange. Anyway, 25% usage 2 years ago, 24% in a cup of coffee last year, and 22% this year, 17 in the postseason.
Yeah, still a 21% rebounding percentage though. I mean, the rebounds are there, the assists.
Oh, rebound.
Yeah, I mean, he's picking up 3 assists per game in the series as well. He's still scoring. He's averaging 13.3 points per game. So, the usage is down a little bit, and I think that's kind of just, you see that happen, especially when you have ball dominant guards that can score like Lillard and McCollum. They're just going to kind of call their own number a little bit more. But I still think you have a high ceiling here for Nurkic, and like I said, even with the decrease in usage in the series, still a little over 1.2 fantasy points per minute.
Okay. Are we getting any Norman Powell?
I still like the salary on DraftKings at 5,600. I think more of a secondary play. He's a 0.8 to 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy. That's where he's at in this series, even after the last game. That's where he was after he was traded to Portland during the regular season. I think that you're going to get around 36 minutes from him, which is nice. And 5,600 is a pretty affordable salary. 7K on Fanduel, I think, is going to be a little bit more difficult to get to. And then Robert Covington, I think, is also a decent option here. He hasn't produced very well in this series, only about 0.6 fantasy points per minute. But during the regular season, when he played with Lillard, McCollum, and Nurkic, he was at 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. You're getting huge minutes from him for someone priced around $5,000. So I think that Covington, not the first guy I'm putting in, but someone that I think can kind of help, round out your lineups.
Okay. KCP expected to play today. Red Dog, water ain't going to help it, man. These allergies have just infiltrated my entire face, and they will not go away.
Might have been pretty bad recently too.
Right? It's crazy, man. I never get them either. And this
year
I
get them all the time, but
do you?
Yeah.
This year I've just been shit all over. It's just miserable. My wife gets them terribly every year. So she's like, use this nasal spray, use this.
Yeah.
Which I did, and it helps, but I'm not perfect. Do you have any other interest in Portland here when we're talking some of these lesser expensive options? Carmelo Anthony has been, in the amount of minutes he's played, he hasn't been bad in terms of just overall usage, but him and Robert Covington, who our chat absolutely hates this guy, but Adam, his price is still kind of bottomed out for a guy playing 36 to 39 minutes in every playoff game. I hate to say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I was just saying about Covington, not somebody I'm going to feel good about, but certainly someone that can help round out your lineup just based on the minutes he's playing. We didn't really talk about McCollum, but I still think he's a good option here. 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,800 on Fanduel. Maybe a little bit more difficult to get to on Fanduel just because he's more expensive than Devin Booker at shooting guard. But, he's going to play 38 or so minutes if this game's close. He's got around the 25 or 24% usage rate in this series. He's hurt a little bit by the fact that Lillard is playing so many minutes. You're getting a couple less minutes than normal where he gets to play without Lillard. So you've seen that hurt the assists in particular. But, I still think McCollum is a pretty good option, especially if you can't quite find the money for Lillard.
Okay. Any other thoughts here?
Nope.
All right. And no, yeah, I was just kind of reinforcing the Covington thing because people can't stand him. And I get it, right? Like there aren't many things that are more, I'd almost rather a guy get in foul trouble and only play 15 minutes and suck. When I look at a game and I see that Covington was on the floor for 90% of the game and was just a complete non-factor, it's definitely frustrating. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's just you kind of have to remind yourself, like if Covington plays 38 minutes and gets 0.7 fantasy points per minute, which is not a good rate. It's below his season average. And it's not, it's one of those where if you're watching the game, it's just like, this is brutal. That's still 26 fantasy points at 4,800.
It's still probably better on a slate like this than most, if not all of the other players in his price range.
Yeah. And the power forward position is pretty weak as well. One other note rotation wise for Portland, we once again saw Enes Kanter basically not in the rotation last game. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson got some backup center minutes. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect Kanter to play. I do think that if Nurkic were to get in bad foul trouble, Kanter would play though. So it's basically, I don't think Kanter is going to play against Denver's second unit. I think if Nurkic is in bad foul trouble, you get Kanter against Jokic, but I don't think they're going to use him against JaMychal Green, Paul Millsap.
I'm a Tulsa Dog suggests I snort blow to clear up the allergies. I don't know, dude.
You would never.
If it's bad enough, it'll only make it worse. I won't be able to breathe. No, it's been a very, very long time. At least I'll be numb to it all though, right? All right, the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets on the other side of this game. It's been a good series. Oddly enough, there have been a couple games that weren't even that close, but we're knotted up at 2 right now, right? 2-2 series?
I don't know.
You don't know? I think it's game 5, isn't it?
It is game 5, and yeah, it's 2-2.
Yeah, it's 2-2. I got lost there for a minute. Nikola Jokic, among all of the other top tier options, where do you prioritize him today?
I think if you're ignoring the position, he's my number one. Like I think he projects the highest. The reason why from when you start building lineups, maybe you don't get quite as much, and why for example, we have Tatum projected for a little bit more ownership, is that you do have Nurkic, you do have DeAndre Ayton, who we'll talk about in the last game. You have Tristan Thompson at center. So there is some pretty solid upside in the mid range at center that makes the opportunity cost kind of high. But if you're not talking about that and you're just talking about who's going to score the most points, Jokic gets Jokic is my pick.
All right. Okay. Now, what about Michael Porter today? I know Josh liked him quite a bit.
Yeah, I like him too, which scares me because I don't think I've ever gotten Michael Porter right. He kind of just always does the opposite of what I need. But the reason I like him is that his true shooting percentage in this series is like 10 points lower than it was during the regular season in the games he played without Jamal Murray. He averaged 1.12 DraftKings points per minute in those games. In the games so far in the postseason, he's at like 0.85 fantasy points per minute. So the usage is down a little bit from like 23% to about 21%, but that's something that can be made up for just by, his shot is falling. He's going to take more of them. That's typically, how it works. So I'm not concerned about a usage drop off for him really. I'm not concerned about poor shooting because that just happens. And, we're talking about 4 games. So I think that, it's a spot where you can take advantage of a falling price point. Only 6,500 really stands out on FanDuel. 7K is fine on DraftKings as well.
Oh man, Facundo Campazzo is $5,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's $6,200. I don't think any of us anticipated him actually playing legitimate minutes every night in the postseason, even in round 1. But here we are. He's played 30 minutes plus, 30 to 32 minutes in 3 of the last 4 games. In that last game on the 29th, of which they got smoked and were down by 33 points towards the end of the third quarter. Campazzo just didn't play at all in the fourth outside. Well, he played 4.5 minutes, but didn't play at all to close the game. It was a full bench effort there. So you have to assume if it's competitive, he gets another 30 to 32 minutes. And while he hasn't he hasn't shown a huge ceiling, rightfully so. You're playing alongside guys like Jokic and Michael Porter, and there's a decent squad around you. Campazzo's actually been pretty productive. I just don't know if he's at a price point now that justifies getting the 30 to 35 from him and being happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, the price point's kind of tough. Like, it's going to be really difficult to prioritize him. I think he's projected for about 10% ownership on DraftKings, which makes sense to me. It does make him someone that, certainly could use as a contrarian piece in your tournament lineups, because he has produced well in this series. He's averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute. He's got a 28.8% assist percentage, which you really like to see, since you know that he's going to lose usage to guys like Jokic and Porter. You need those assists to be there, and they have been. So he's averaged about 30 minutes per game, including the game that he didn't play the fourth quarter last time. So I think you can get 32 minutes or so from him at around a fantasy point per minute. It's just that he's priced for that. So it's hard to get too excited about him, even though he has played well.
All right. Over under asked, does Laffy not? I don't know why I entertain this dude. Sometimes it's just fun. Does Laffy not know, Laffy in all caps, that Murray tore his ACL? Yeah, I'm just glad you reminded me of that. No, what I didn't know is that Campazzo would be the guy that benefited the most from all this, but he is. Does does Monte Morris have any appeal to you at all? A guy that's probably going to play 25 minutes or so on the season. He's been a sub 1 fantasy point per minute guy. I think he's like 0.8, but is there any appeal there if his ownership's low?
A little bit, just because he's cheap. It's kind of guy that, you can get 26 to 28 minutes from him if this game's close and he's playing well. He's averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute for the series. It's not a guy that I'm excited about. I think the pricing on Denver, for the most part, outside of Jokic, Porter, and to some extent Aaron Gordon, is pretty sharp. But I wouldn't tell anyone not to play Monte Morris if he's like the last piece of their lineup, and they need him to fill it out.
All right, let's get into the nitty gritty here. The Denver Nuggets have a couple of guys off the bench that could provide a little bit of value. I was going to say spark, but it's hardly much spark. JaMychal Green, and this is the strange part to me. JaMychal Green's getting some ownership right now, up around 15%. Paul Millsap, and I did want to refresh this and see if we have a more recent update. When was the last one? 11 minutes ago. Okay, so let's see where Denver is now. JaMychal Green's at 12. All right. Millsap's down to 8. Millsap's minutes have been kind of all over the place, and I don't anticipate him getting a ton, but he's producing at an insane per minute clip this postseason. And while, again, you can't expect huge run or huge production, if he's virtually unowned, are you willing to take any shots that maybe Millsap plays 18 minutes and rips off 1.5 fantasy points per minute?
It's another one of those where I think it really depends how many lineups you're playing. Like, if you're playing 3 max tournaments, I don't think you're going to need to go that far off the board. But if you're playing these large field, top heavy 20,000 person tournaments where, 30% of the prize pool or whatever is going to first place, there's just a lot more reason to be willing to take risks like that. There's certainly, on average, you're going to get like 13 or 14 minutes from Millsap. He has been really productive this postseason, like you said. But, if you play this game 100 times, there's probably at least a couple times where Millsap, for one reason or another, gets 18 or 20 minutes, whether Porter, gets hurt, gets in foul trouble, whatever. Like, there's things that happen in basketball games. So you're not expecting him to do enough at 3,600 even to be someone you really want. But, when you're talking about the lottery style tournaments, I can see going to him or going to JaMychal Green.
All right. What about JaMychal Green then?
Yeah, I think the minutes look better for Green. The problem is just that he's averaging like 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute this year. I think you could use him as like a pivot away from Peyton Pritchard, for example, assuming Pritchard's going to get more ownership in tournaments. I think Pritchard projects higher, and he's the guy that I would go to first. But the range of outcomes isn't drastically different between Green and Pritchard, I don't think.
All right, to wrap this one up, anyone you didn't touch on yet? Gordon, Rivers, just those two guys, I think, are the only ones that we haven't spent much time on.
Yeah, Gordon, I think, is the one that really deserves a mention. He's only 5K on Fanduel. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. The playing time has been kind of all over the place, but in the last competitive game, he played about 33 minutes. He followed it up. He only played about 14 minutes in the first half last game, which you didn't really like to see. But he's around a 0.8 to 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy with the Nuggets. And I think the price tag's just at a point where it's pretty reasonable if you think you're going to get around 30 minutes from Aaron Gordon at a weak power forward position. So I have some interest there. Austin Rivers, I'm less interested in, just because, one, you need him to get the minutes, which are pretty volatile. He can lose them to Morris. He can lose them a variety of ways. And then, two, you need him to play at a much better level than he normally does.
All right, let's wrap it up with the Lakers and the Phoenix Suns. I will humbly ask, though, we've got about a 15% like to viewer ratio right now. If we could bring that up to 20, that'd be great. 314 likes, at least 350 would do us a solid here going into the home stretch. Talking Lakers against the Suns. Lakers are 5-point dogs here, which I know you hate when I say this, but totally suggest that Anthony Davis is not going to play tonight.
Okay.
Oh, man. Would you? Okay. There's no way you got the Lakers at +5 if Anthony Davis and LeBron James are active.
You broke up. I didn't hear your question.
I said there's no way you got the Lakers at +5 getting 5 points if LeBron and Davis are active.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. And the wording or expectation, I think, is that he doesn't play.
Right. And listen, to be fair, and to your point, I think the point that you've made many times too is that the public can overreact to something and move that line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't think people are expecting Davis to play.
Right.
So it's not like, I'm not looking at that saying like, oh, Vegas knows something. Like Davis is truly questionable and Vegas knows he's not going to play. I think people just don't think he's going to play.
Yeah. It was just weird. He had the MRIs day to day. Then he was doubtful. And then Vogel said he's optimistic that he could play. I don't know. I don't think it's likely. KCP is likely to play. So we're going to get him on the floor, but assuming Davis is out, LeBron James today, $9,800 on DraftKings seems pretty reasonable given the circumstances. 10,000 even on FanDuel as well. We talked Jokic. We talked about we talked Jokic. We talked Tatum. All of the Brooklyn studs. Now it comes down to LeBron James. Where does he slot in with all of these guys?
I still think it's behind those guys. It's not that I have a problem with James here. I do think it's a pretty good salary. But during the regular season, in the games he played without Anthony Davis, he averaged 1.51 DraftKings points per minute. In the games he played without him, he averaged with him, he averaged 1.48. You didn't see a really big jump in terms of production. Now, could that change in the postseason? It certainly could. You can see, LeBron in games that matter really, really take over and, kind of just take over everything and not trust, Schroeder, Drummond, Kuzma, whoever. That's certainly possible. But I still think that I just lean a little bit more towards the guys like Jokic and Tatum and Durant than LeBron. But, again, it's certainly a good play. Like you're not making a bad play by putting in a $9,800 LeBron James. Yeah,
no, certainly not. I guess the biggest question here really is how much does Anthony Davis being out affect LeBron James? And is it enough to where he vaults ahead of all of these other options? You're saying not right now. No, it's not enough.
Yeah, I don't think so. And the thing for me too is that I fully expect, right now we have him projected to be the third highest owned guy on DraftKings. I think it's a situation where you're probably going to see ownership overreact to, assuming Davis is out. LeBron's ceiling does, I think, get higher without Davis because there's one less star on his team to take touches away. His average production goes up a little bit, but not that much. But I think it's a situation, kind of like we talk about. I mean, it's different, obviously, but we talk about with Luka when Porzingis sits. Everyone just sees, the second best player on the team is out and jams the guy in, regardless of what past games actually suggest is going to happen. So I think that, if Davis were in, I don't think LeBron's 30% owned. So I think that any benefits that you're getting from Davis being out are probably offset by the increase in ownership.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Now, when you're talking about the trickle down effect, though, with Davis being expected out, it's obviously LeBron James. There's no way he'd be 30%, even on this slate. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it. And some might argue that 30% is low for him just based on the overreaction that you're talking about. I thought it could actually have been higher. Kyle Kuzma, Schroeder, Drummond, Gasol, KCP, all of these guys are coming in very similar projected ownership right now. It's crazy that you can take someone as good as Anthony Davis off the floor and really nobody gains immense boosts in ownership as a result.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of weird because there's still a lot of ways the Lakers can run this rotation is one thing. And then LeBron just does so much stuff. You know, Schroeder, for example, goes from averaging 0.84 DraftKings points per minute to 0.94 in games that he's played with LeBron and without Davis compared to when they both play. Kuzma's around 0.96 fantasy points per minute as well. If you get 30 plus minutes from Kuzma at 4,600, that's a pretty good value. But you also could see Markieff Morris soak up some minutes. He's only 3K flat. I mean, we've seen him start games in place of Davis this year. So that's something that, you know, we'll have to keep an eye on. Kuzma did start the second half last game. So until we hear otherwise, my guess is that Kuzma starts. But, you know, that's one way that things can, you know, can be kind of hard to predict. And then the center rotation, I'm actually really interested in tournaments because we have seen Anthony Davis closing games at the 5. So, and we've seen Montrezl Harrell not really be in the rotation. So I think there's a chance, you know, you could get Harrell just picking up like 8 minutes or something. That could happen. But I think there's also a chance that you get a 48-minute split between Andre Drummond and Marc Gasol. Gasol's 5,200 on Fanduel, which is insane, but he's only 3,600 on DraftKings. I think it kind of goes overlooked. He's actually been productive. He's averaging over a fantasy point per minute in the 3 games he's played in this series. But in 12 games during the regular season that Davis was out and LeBron played, he still averaged 1.02 DraftKings points per minute. If you get, let's say, 22 minutes from Marc Gasol at 3,600, I think that's a pretty decent value. And then Andre Drummond, we don't know what the minutes are going to look like. You know, there's certainly a case to be made that Gasol is more useful for this team in this matchup than Drummond is. But at 5,200, you know, if Drummond goes from playing 22 minutes to 28 minutes, which, you know, I don't think is the most likely case, but it's certainly possible, then suddenly you have a very, very good play here. So they're both relatively low owned. I wouldn't play them together, but I do think that in tournaments, looking to one or both of those guys, depending how many lineups you're playing, is a pretty interesting way to go, because I think that there's enough uncertainty there that, you know, Davis being out could benefit them minutes wise. We don't know exactly how. We haven't seen it yet, but I think it's going a little bit overlooked.
I said the same thing earlier today. I absolutely think it's going overlooked. And I think, of course, you look at the starting lineup in the second half was Drummond, LeBron, Schroeder, Wes Matthews, and Kyle Kuzma. Drummond only played, what did he play?
6
one
minutes.
Rotation in that one. So you don't really know what's going to happen. It's really tough to say. And a lot of that, I would assume, has to do with the fact that the Suns were down by, I think, 11 points midway through this, or a quarter way through the second quarter. And then they just started pulling away from the Lakers to start that second half. Coincidentally, you did not have Anthony Davis in that, despite finishing the first half. So is that any indication of what's going to happen in this game? Drummond starts the second half, the Suns start to pull away, and then he never comes back. I don't want to say it is, but I could see something like that happening. I could also see something like the Lakers playing well and Drummond does play 26 or 27 minutes. But
yeah, and I think it's also worth noting that Harrell did play 5 minutes in that second half. So, like, if you're looking at the second half rotation to try and get clues, I think the most likely thing tonight is that Drummond continues to play 22 to 24 minutes. Gasol probably gets like 20-ish, and then Harrell plays, you know, 4 or 6, whatever the math ends up being.
But the weird thing was that Harrell's minutes came in the second half as Marc Gasol's direct substitute, and Andre Drummond had nothing to do with the rotation for the final 20 minutes of the game.
Right. But we've kind of seen that rotation. Like, earlier in the series, you're getting basically 3 stints from Andre Drummond. He's starting the game, he's closing the first half, he's starting the third, and then he's not coming back.
Right. All right. Anything else you want to hit on from the Lakers, or do you want to go to the Suns?
No, I think we can go to Phoenix.
All right, let's do it. Making pretty good time today. I'm proud of us, man. What are you doing with Devin Booker at $8,100 on DraftKings? Seems reasonable enough. $7,500 on FanDuel seems a lot more reasonable. He hasn't been spectacular at all. It's been a tough matchup. Even without LeBron and Anthony Davis, this is one of the best defenses in the league. They finished with the #1 defensive rating. Does Devin Booker stand out as somebody that deserves our attention today?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. He's not shooting particularly well in this series. His true shooting percentage is about 4 points lower than it was during the regular season. But the big thing for me is he's averaging 41.5 minutes per game with a 30.7% usage rate. That's down a couple points from where he was at during the regular season, but it's still, you know, a lot of volume for Devin Booker. And the price point is, I think, just really reasonable. Like, if he were shooting well and averaging 41.5 minutes per game, he'd be a hell of a lot more expensive than 8,100 on DraftKings or 7,500 on FanDuel, which really stands out. So I think, you know, based on the minutes and based on the type of production we know Devin Booker can give you, I'm inclined to go back to him here.
Jordan, why do you have a better looking badge than mine? You joined before I did? Oh, you son of a bitch. I'm still rocking the bronze badge, man. Hit that join now. Hit that join now too. If you want to join, become part of the community here on the YouTubes for Awesemo. Got the badges, the emojis, and we got some other perks in the works that are going to be pretty cool. I think you guys will appreciate them. And of course, prioritize your questions. Any questions you guys got, hit us with them, and we'll be happy to answer them throughout the show. Getting a little late now, but what are we going with DeAndre Ayton, second in line here behind Devin Booker, and his minutes have been through the roof in this series. He's played well defensively. He's rebounding well. Like, DeAndre Ayton is having a series that I'm not sure many of us anticipated.
Yeah, I think he's been one of the biggest surprises of the playoffs. And, he's averaging a little over a fantasy point per minute. So it's not like he's giving us great production on a per minute basis, but you wouldn't really expect him to in a tough matchup against the Lakers. It's just that he's averaging just shy of 40 minutes per game. And, we've played 4 games in this series now. So he's consistently been able to stay on the floor. He's, playing really well. He's getting huge playing time, and he's still pretty inexpensive, mid 7K price tag. That's really good for a guy averaging a fantasy point per minute and playing 40 minutes per game. Really just needs to go out there and play at an average level, and you'll be very happy with him in your lineup. So I expect him to get a lot of ownership again tonight. He's someone, he's one of the big reasons why I think, as much as I love Jokic, it might be a little bit more difficult once I start building lineups to get as much as I would like to, just because, you're paying $3,000 more at a pretty strong position. You can go to someone like Ayton. You look at the power forward position, you look at the small forward position. There's not really a $7,400 guy that offers the same type of production that Ayton does. So it's going to naturally make the pay-up options at those positions help your lineup a little bit more, I think.
Chris Paul it's been a Jekyll and Hyde type series for him. Kind of no fault of his own. There's no doubt in my mind in game 2, he was clearly still dealing with what they called that stinger in his shoulder. Game 3, everyone's like, Chris Paul's back. He looks great. And then in the second half, his shoulder was hanging off his body. Like, he looked like he was someone casted from The Walking Dead through the second half of that game. So it was encouraging to see that third game attempting, twice as many shots as he did in the prior game. He was clearly feeling a lot better. And with those injuries, they say it shouldn't linger that long. So I'm assuming he's back to 100% for tonight. And he looked at last game too.
Yeah, he did. And the salary is pretty affordable. 6,600 on DraftKings, I think, looks pretty good. He played, about 32 minutes last game. I'm expecting something similar here. And for the season, he averaged 1.24 DraftKings points per minute. So he's down sub 1 fantasy point per minute in the series, but he's playing through an injury. So, we don't know exactly how he feels. We don't know, how he'll look tonight, but it seems like he's progressing. He played well last game, and I'm inclined to think that you're going to get, close to a healthy Chris Paul here at only 6,600. So I think it looks pretty good. Certainly something to look to in tournaments. I'm not really even opposed to going there in cash games.
All right, round out the rest of the Suns for me. Any of these auxiliary options that generally look pretty awful stand out to you or make sense in large field tournaments?
Yeah, in tournaments. I mean, Mikal Bridges has been awful in this series in terms of fantasy production, only about a half of a fantasy point per minute. But in the regular season, he was about a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. He's still averaging 34 minutes per game at 5K. So there's some value there. Jay Crowder played about 35 minutes last game. He's dealt with a little bit of foul trouble earlier in the series, but it seems like he's a pretty good bet to be in the low to mid 30s if he can avoid foul trouble. He's another, reasonable option in basically the same mold as like Robert Covington. And then Cam Payne, he's still at 5,400, if he's going to play 25 or 26 minutes, there's still a path to success. But with Chris Paul, assuming Chris Paul's, just getting healthier by the game, it's really tough, I think, to go back to Payne.
Well, that'll do it for us. Solid show. We've got a little bit less than a minute left. So I'll ask you, as I always do when we've got some cushion, which generally never happens. And I know I asked you earlier, but just to round this out, we got over 2,000 people watching. Appreciate you getting that like button above 400, fellas and ladies. The favorite top priced option today is, and your favorite value option is?
So Jokic and Tatum at the top. Value on DraftKings, I think it's Pritchard. Again, I don't feel great about that. I'd throw Marc Gasol in there too. I like him as a value. They're both priced up on Fanduel. On Fanduel, I guess I would go. There's not really a whole lot of like cheap good value on Fanduel, but I would say Fournier at 5,500 looks really good.
And I'll say this much, not going to make people happy, but Davis Bertans, right? Everybody hated him. Boom. Would have had a much bigger game too yesterday. 89 got hurt. Jason Tatum starts off first 2 games looking bad. Boom, huge performance. You could run down the list just in the postseason alone, Adam, of a lot of guys that people say, I'm not going near that guy. I'm not touching him. And then he erupts, right? Now, in no way, shape, or form am I saying Robert Covington's going to drop 30 real points today. But you best believe at some point that Robert Covington game at 4,800 playing almost 40 minutes a game will happen because he'll just stumble into it.
Yeah, and he's cheap enough and playing so many minutes right now that like, not that, I'm not saying he has a high floor, but he does enough stuff still where like he hasn't really been productive in this series, and he's still giving you good performances for his salary in 2 out of the 4 games.
Yeah. So love him or hate him, sometimes things are necessities. Stick around. Eric Lindquist and the recent 50K winner, Christopher Spags, coming up next on the Live Before Lock show. This has been the Deeper Dive presented by No House Advantage. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Good luck. Adam and I'll catch you back here one more time tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.
What is up, guys? You got yourselves about 56 minutes left until lock. It's today's NBA DFS slate. We are going to be here for you for every minute of that, plus 30 more to talk about some of the new offerings over at our sponsor, No House Advantage, but we'll get to that in a moment. I am Chris Spags, joined once again by a man who has brought you so many hours of great content on this channel, usually by proxy of my genius, but still, he's great on his own too. He's Eric Lindquist. How you doing, Eric?
What do I say to you? Yeah, I mean, I know we vibe. I know it's a good thing. I know it's all in good fun and all in good jest. But what the hell? Like you really always ratchet. You find a way to surprise me, and I have to say, the surprise. That's what people tune in for.
You got to keep you all on your toes, including my own co-host here, Eric. But we appreciate all of you guys for being here. So first of all, hit that like button and subscribe, not just for this show, but also to give a little shout out to Loughran and Adam. Loughran even hung on after the show to say some kind words to me because I hadn't seen him since my big day. I feel like uncomfortable even talking about it because it's such be luck boxing. I'm ashamed of.
It's fine, I'm okay.
My shame. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
I'm Puppet Spags is what I am.
It's honestly not a bad Spags puppet. I'll give you credit.
Thank you
for
so much. Oh, there you go. But I just have to talk really fast. But it is more like this when I'm going to do it. Like that.
Well, Loughran deserves some extra likes for being such a gentleman as well. It even admits being a new
paranoid.
father. So
you're paranoid.
Hit that great like button for Loughran, please, as well as us. And also make sure to check out all the offerings that we have at awesemo.com/join. If you're curious about how we talk about some of the data on here, the ownership projections, the player projections, the lineup builder tool, as well as the boom bust tool, all of that is part of a premium package for NBA. You get all the data for just $29.95, including for MLB, for PGA, for all the sports we cover, MMA, NASCAR. It's all in there for $29.95 at awesemo.com/join. You can also get yourself an Awesemo Plus NBA weekly package for just $16.95. You can even get an express package for just $4.95 if you want to get access to the premium Slack, as well as all the showdown content and grade form of the player projections and ownership projections. So go find all these options for yourself at awesemo.com/join. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Feel free to check out the NBA Big Board as well. That is our free premium tool of the day, and one that does have some fun data on you there. Oh boy, on there for you as well. Now I'm all flustered by the Spags impression. It just really took me off.
How does it feel to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes? How does that feel, Spags?
Honestly, not great. That's one thing. I'm better for my hypocritical castle. But let's talk, Eric, about this slate here. And one guy that was a key part of what I got my lucky run with on Friday with, and who's going to be a core part of everybody's lineups today, it looks like Jason Tatum. And we've talked a lot about the Celtics in the series with Brooklyn recently, where Celtics have won one game here. This is a do or die game 5 for them, where if they lose, they are going home. They're also going to be without Kemba Walker, without Robert Williams, and Jason Tatum in situations on the year without Kemba, without Jaylen Brown. 36% usage rate, actually a little bit higher than that. 22% assist rate. Everything is going to funnel through him. It's also when you magnify it with the do or die part of the game as well. I don't see how you get away from Tatum. I would have gotten him in 100% of lineups if I weren't trying to be a little more conservative, as I'm putting down too much money, putting down a month's rent here for my lineups today. And that's why I'm only cutting Tatum to 60%, Eric. But you tell me, how are you feeling about him with the field? Expects to be playing him around 40% on both DK and FanDuel today.
You know how much Tatum I have on both sites?
I'm going to guess over that number.
60% is the number. I literally have the identical cap that I put on him because I was getting so much. It's unbelievable. He's my highest owned player on both sites. I like how Adam basically changed his mind on the show, which was awesome, it's what somebody who's talking through a situation should do. I think on the front end, he was like, yeah, there's blowout potential. There's this, there's that. There's no blowout potential. If they're down 25 in the fourth quarter, he's going to go out there because you know what happens as soon as he gets done with this game? He goes home to his kid and he just chills because that's what he's going to do for a couple months as soon as this game's over. It's going to be Jason Tatum going out trying to put up 50 real points, and he's going to attempt. I would set the over under of shot attempts at 30. I think I would take the over.
I would take the over. I'd put him at 25 though, because I feel like 30 just feels a little aggressive for a prop line. I'm actually curious if there is a market out there for just pure shot attempts for him, but I think you're in the range though, 25 to 35.
So he shot 30. He shot 30 times in game 3. Obviously went nuclear. It was fun. It was very enjoyable for everybody involved. Put up 22 last game. Played 40 minutes, but also didn't play the last 2 minutes or whatever that he would have closed out. Even if they're down 15 in the last 5 minutes of this game, he'll still be out there. If they're down 30, I bet he's still out there up until the 7-8 minute mark. So give me a guaranteed 35 minutes of a dude who, as you said, I mean, we're seeing plus mid 30s usage here in the last couple games. I want all of that I possibly can. I think there's no question that he should be the highest owned player, I think, on DraftKings today, and that's what we're seeing, and I still want more.
Yeah, the downside, I think, with Tatum, and maybe it's an upside if you're able to sort of play this sort of 4D chess approach to DFS, but the downside is if Tatum has a bad day, this game's a blowout. There's no way around it. If he shoots, 5 for that 25 or 8 for that 30, the game is over. There's nobody else here who could pull it, barring some magical day from Evan Fournier or Marcus Smart. And even then, I don't know if that's quite enough to close the gap. So I guess to me, that's the reason why, and people in the chat talking about their Tatum exposure caps, that's to me is why it ended up 60% was the right number for me. But how are you feeling Like, is there any pathway to you here where you could play the Celtics expecting to either be competitive or win the game and not play Jason Tatum?
No, it's like almost remotely impossible. Like if those are two things that I think are just so correlated strongly. Like if Tatum does not score 30 plus real points, it is 100% impossible for the Celtics to win this game. Like just, I think it would be a 1% outcome, basically. Like Jason Tatum has to be electric in every single sense of the word. And for me, what really solidifies my stance on Jason Tatum is heading to the boom bust tool and just sorting by boom percentage. And you're seeing two guys that I think markedly are the best two spend ups on the slate, in Jason Tatum and Nikola Jokic, and we're still getting positive leverage. And so I think the thing you're fading with Tatum is the opportunity cost of making him your spend up, as opposed to some of these guys that might be getting lower ownership, but because it's pretty flat, like LeBron is still coming in just short of 30%. You're seeing KD with 15. You're seeing Damian Lillard with 19. I would rather just go way overweight on Jason Tatum at 10K, who's a little bit cheaper than Harden, a little bit cheaper than like on DraftKings specifically, a lot of those guys. I think it really, for me, the question is like whether I would want a Jokic or not because of the opportunity cost at the middle of the center range between 8 and between Nurkic, even Drummond, Gasol on the bottom end. Like there's a lot of center plays that I'm very interested on DraftKings to be heavy exposed to. And I think Jason Tatum is just like, he's the closest thing that I could possibly get to like with a stud where we have so many of them up here. He just stands out so much more for me, and seeing a 40+% boom percentage for him and like even 1 or 2% ownership, it hasn't gotten carried away. I want more.
Let's talk quickly about Marcus Smart. We also have a super chat here from I also for DFS, but it's more of a strategy question, so I want to put that aside for a second here. But Marcus Smart, I think, is an important play as well because he is another guy to me, does get the usage and rate upticks, really more the rate upticks across the board. The assist is a noteworthy thing for him in court time without Kemba and Jaylen Brown, just shy of a 27% assist rate that here are the guys of the deeper dive just talk about. And Marcus Smart is price tag. I think if you are to believe that Boston, here's the thing, and I mentioned this with Boston winning on Friday, and that was a lot of what we talked about on the tip-off that day, a lot of what I did with, narratively for my own lineups. I do think today, Boston, I just don't think they go limply into the night. I find it hard to believe here. I am a believer in good coaching and what that does. And I also think Jason Tatum too, one of those guys who all year long I've been, when he was down with COVID and kind of had that bad swing, you're kind of disappointed in that. But I think he's one of those star player guys that I think this hangs in there. And I think it does come down to Tatum and Marcus Smart, more so Tatum, but Smart being competent today is a big part of how this one stays close. The projection for him looks good. I'll be heavily above the field on him too. I'll have him in about half my lineups, Eric. So how are you feeling about Marcus Smart? And I guess the question would be for you, do you also prefer Evan Fournier, or do you want to go to Evan Fournier? Because he is one guy I will get very little of. And my stand today is going to be a Tatum, Peyton Pritchard, and Marcus Smart stance, and not one in favor of Evan Fournier.
Yeah, so Marcus Smart, I was getting to, I know it's strange, but 6,800 over on Fanduel. I'm getting even more of him there than I am over on DraftKings. I'm playing 3 main lineups on DraftKings and bouncing them around in a bunch of 3 max stuff and in the 20 and a bunch of different things. And I'm I feel good about that. I was playing some baseball there too, and I didn't want to screw around with too much. And Fanduel was having their issues. It seems like everything's working fine on my end. Hopefully it's working fine on your end too. But Marcus Smart, where you're playing 2 shooting guards, I think it gets very wonky as soon as you get out of like that top end range where you get out of Harden, McCollum, Booker, Smart. There's nobody underneath. I've removed everybody out of my pool. Actually, no, I lied. I got 10%. So I got 2 shares of Aaron Nesmith. So that's whatever. He's 3,500 flat there, and it's just going to give me a different build in a lot of different ways where, I'm just kind of hoping maybe everybody else at the position doesn't go completely nuts and you get 2 other studs that go for 65 plus and that lineup can be live. But I'm not trying to do too many crazy things at that position specifically. And so Marcus Smart definitely showing up meaningfully for me too. I think, 50% sounds like a number I would probably want to be getting to on DK. I'm playing him in one of my 3. I'm trying to bounce around. Peyton Pritchard's the guy I want to ask you about because we finally saw that ownership bounce up because I had a feeling he was going to be closer to like 40% today. Yeah. And all day he's been underneath 20%. We just saw it get up to 28, 29%, which makes me feel relieved because I was going to have 100%. I was going to play him in all 3 of my big lineups over on DK if that was the case, if he was under 20%. What are you doing with Peyton Pritchard today?
So Peyton Pritchard's one of those, I guess, symptoms of the slate here for me. And I think this ties into I hustle for it's a question here that we can just sort of transition to. But asking how far from the optimal will you guys stray when trying to get different? Seems like the entire playoffs of the optimal is 300, lineups projecting 250. You're taking it. I don't think it's quite that much of a disparity. And I know part of that is why I was actually tinkering with my lineups. And it's something I've talked about on the shows before, where part of my issues during the year has just been sorting too aggressively and kind of killing myself from lineups that actually ended up being, ones that could have finished well in a tournament or, did finish relative to what the projections were well in a tournament. And I do think for me, that's sort of the thing where I'm not straying off that different. And I don't want to I don't really care about revealing it, because honestly, the odds of you guys doing the exact same thing I do is unlikely. But on Fantasy Cruncher, what I do is I'm basically, this is the thing that I've been doing recently that did work for me on Friday, is that I've just been cutting the exposures down, really not getting anybody above 50%. 50% is my cap on Fantasy Cruncher for the exposures for the guys who I'm viewing as, not sure things, but guys who have steady rotational run, who are projected over fantasy point per minute. So on this slate, guys like Tatum, guys like DeAndre Ayton, guys like LeBron, Jokic, etc. Those guys 50%. Guys that are real flimsy to me, I might cap at 5%, though normally closer to 20%. So the other day, Seth Curry would have been one of those guys, so I didn't get quite as killed by him yesterday. And then the rest of the guys are going to be 33% capped. And then when you sort 100 or 1,000 lineups, which is what I'm doing, then I'm taking out the top 170 or so of the highest owned lineups. So I'm already cutting down a good amount of ownership by having my 1,000 not have all of them. But I think really the main thing for me is you're still trying to get away from what that core profile or portfolio is of lineups that are going to be out there. So that to me is a big part, is that I'm not trying to get that different. I'm trying to get just different enough where my projections will probably be, 7 or 8 points off the optimal, but still close enough within that 15-point range that Awesemo's talked about. And I don't know, that's just me basically spelling out everything I've been doing. So if it works for you, I hope so. If don't follow it like gospel, because it may not work for anybody. But Eric, if you have any thoughts on overall strategy, please feel free to take it from me.
No, I think that process is very, very sharp. I'll kind of piggyback on it where, so the last 2 NBA seasons, I've been fortunate enough to write an article. My step into Awesemo was writing this article called The Slate Starter, and it became the podcast with Ryan this year. And I've still written an article every single weekday. I haven't missed one for since the bubble started until this very day, where I've been able to write a Slate Starter article every single time, just talking about, I really don't even have any direction. I get to talk about game theory or plays or value or whatever I really want to discuss. And something that you said is very, very sharp. And we're seeing disparity in the regular season between minutes. Think of a guy like Julius Randle compared to LeBron James, what their minutes look like and their salaries. It's like, of course you want to get to more Julius Randle. The number of times that LeBron James is going to outperform him for more money, and that would work out optimally, is so small. And so it becomes easy where you can plug in cheaper value. If you're making 150, you play Julius Randle, you have a guaranteed number of run. You're getting a guy who's playing 40 plus minutes in regulation, and he just stands out as a better play. Now, what we're seeing on the top end with all these guys is that everybody's playing around 40 minutes, other than Jokic, who's played fewer. So, of course, you want to cap it at something like 50%. And the reason I put 60 on Jason Tatum was, I want to still have, specifically on Fanduel where I'm playing more lineups, I specifically want to bounce around some of these studs, take a couple of shots on some value that might be sketchy, might have some other things, make a stronger stand there, and really kind of bounce around my exposures so that I have different kind of builds with a core that kind of exists, knowing full well that the difference between James Harden and Kyrie Irving's minutes is basically 2, whereas in the regular season it might be 8, or specifically a guy like LeBron who's going to play 31, 32 minutes in the regular season, Julius Randle will play 42. That's a 10-minute disparity. That's going to be around 10 fantasy points. So those are the kind of things we have to take and put into play, and it becomes very much game theory based. So I love what you're doing.
And then Ben P, one follow-up question here. So out of those 830 lineups that you already move all the lineups that aren't within 15 points of the optimal, that's part of my sorting. If it's not within 15 points, I have them color-coded so I can't grab them at all. But, it's something that I think what you're talking about, Eric, is really, to me, why this process worked for me is that in the playoffs, there's just less variance in terms of hey, this bench guy killing a starting guy doesn't quite happen as much. It could happen a little bit more with some of these do or die games where somebody gets hot off the bench. You'll see a starter get decreased run. We're seeing that more with the big men in recent games. But I do think for the playoffs, to me, you don't need to necessarily get that far off optimal plays. Guys like Peyton Pritchard, who are at 3,200, he could suck. He could put up 10 fantasy points, but that 10 fantasy points could get you to Tatum, to Jokic, to whatever combination that breaks the slate. And I think, or Michael Porter Jr., even some of those mid-price guys. And that to me is why Peyton Pritchard, to me, I'll have him in, I guess, more than the field based on the ownership we have now. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a way around it, because if there were, I think my process would have sort of vetted him out. And instead, I'm going to have him at 47% today.
Yeah, so Ryan, our friend Ryan Rinpack, everybody knows him. I've been talking NBA with him for, I think it's close to 7 years now. We're getting ready for my bachelor party next week, which I'm pretty excited about in Western South Dakota. Get to see him and we get to hang out. We haven't hung out a lot in person in our lifetimes, but we have spent hours and hours going through lineups and talking about things. And obviously he is at a level that I can't even comprehend how good he has gotten at this game. But the one thing that I do know is that he is one of the short, like the 2-game and 3-game masters out of anybody on planet Earth, because he is willing to incur risk on the bottom end in order to get way over the field on the top end. And that's what you're going to see him do just about every one of these slates, whether it's Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, James Harden. He's going to find ways to get overweight on the guys that he thinks are coming in underowned, or a guy like Jason Tatum he'll have 75% of, and he'll jam in a bunch of Pritchard. He'll jam in a bunch of these low 3K guys that other people might be uncomfortable with. It doesn't seem like Pritchard is that uncomfortable coming off of playing 24 minutes. I think people probably feel more secure about that, which is why I think he will be the guy. But I have one guy in particular that we'll get to if we start talking about the Brooklyn side that I think you want to have some tournament exposure to, that I think has an opportunity to break this slate. And I'll save that for a little bit later.
Okay, so I'm curious to see you're going to go with that, but just give me your thoughts on Fournier real fast, because I'm wondering how you feel about him, because he's going to be 40% owned on Fanduel, and we will do money time here in 9 minutes. So sorry, we're talking more about the overall line construction, but honestly, you heard Adam and Lofty break down the deeper dive. You also heard Eric, Greg, and Kayla on the tip-off talk about some of this stuff. So we're trying to be a little bit less redundant and cover the things that hopefully will actually help you guys out. But Fournier, for you, to me, he is one thing that I think you can get to other positions and not lose a lot in the way of projection, or find guys who are comparable values. So to me, that's why Fournier, and this is a terrifying thing, because I do think one of the ways that Boston stays in this game, and Tatum is not the main guy who keeps it, either it's close or keeps it to a win for them, I think is Fournier having that outlier day that he just hasn't had that often, other than one stretch when Jaylen Brown first went out. And I do think Fournier, to me, is a guy that I could see on the data why you move away from him. But I have some concerns, because Field's going to be there about a quarter on Draftkings, almost half on Fanduel. How are you approaching him today? Are you getting none of him? Are you capping him? What are you doing with him?
I'm so surprised that him and Marcus Smart are the same. Like, if that's true, if they're both going to be in that range together, go way over on Marcus Smart. We're seeing him kind of eat up the usage. Evan Fournier hasn't played great, 25.3% usage, only 28 minutes there. Part of it too is Marcus Smart can just stay out on the floor forever. He's got to be guarding either James Harden, Kyrie. He's going to be bouncing around and, doing his typical stuff. And it seems like he's just kind of got the pathway to playing mid 30s minutes, no matter what. Evan Fournier kind of ebb and flow, and Evan Fournier has just kind of not been good this entire season, this entire series. And you don't want to have like too much recency bias, but it's 4 games in a row in a series against Brooklyn, and Fournier just doesn't necessarily kind of seem confident. Doesn't really feel like, that's not great analysis and it's not data driven, but Fournier just kind of looks off to me. It's something where I was expecting him to have a better series than he's had. And if we're going to talk about a $300 difference on DraftKings, that's not enough for me to want to get double on Marcus Smart and probably flatter a little bit under on Evan Fournier. If that is indeed true, I would be surprised. I think Marcus Smart is probably going to come in at least 10 to 15% more owned than Evan Fournier when it comes down to it. And, it's so hard to get an algorithm to really click. And our ownership projections are unbelievable on this side, but it is so hard on a 3-game slate to understand what the field's going to do. But if you just look at the last 3 box scores out of Marcus Smart next to Evan Fournier, I guarantee you Marcus Smart comes in higher owned.
Yeah, so that's where I'm landing with it. If you want to fade me, feel free to play some more Fournier. That is one that I am definitely going the other direction on. And Fournier will be well represented at the field today. To me, if he were a lesser owned play, I think that's sort of where he gains in tournament appeal. But if he's going to get chalky to very chalky, depending on what site you're playing on, I'm okay getting less than that. And I think that's just where it's going to land for me. Tell me about your Brooklyn guy, because I'm curious your thoughts about how you're approaching this one. Kyrie was one play who I think looked the best on his face. And I did get one Brooklyn guy, and I'm curious if this is the one you got to, who I kind of had to find a way to get down a little bit more, because I don't want to go crazy over the field. But Bruce Brown was popping up a lot for me at his price tag. So I don't think that's your guy based on your lack of reaction there. But tell me, who is your secret mystery Brooklyn Nets player?
I've got in 2 of my 3 big lineups, and also I'm playing some smaller dollar stuff over on DK too, but do not sleep on Nick Claxton. So here's kind of my thinking for this. So obviously we still have no Jeff Green, and Blake Griffin's there, and this is a 12.5 point spread. And I don't know necessarily kind of what happened here. So looking at this last game, it did get out of hand in that game 4. And I think what happens is people don't understand that the second rotation of a bench guy coming in a blowout might actually get impacted. And so what I think happened, the reason that we're seeing those minutes come down, it was really wonky. It was a 20-plus point game going into that fourth quarter. And Nicholas Claxton played the first 3 minutes of it and sat out. He's got only 8 minutes next to him here. So obviously that is not encouraging, and that is a gross feeling. This is a 3-game slate. And you want to talk about leverage. 3,300 for Nicholas Claxton. He's right now a 0.96 fantasy point per minute producer. And I know for a fact, James Harden's talked about liking playing alongside him and has been pretty decent alongside of him here. And I think that if he gets up to 18 minutes, like 18 minutes has to be the gold number that we're getting to. Right now, he's projected for just short of 15. So I was actually pretty encouraged to see that, because I was expecting to see something around 10 or so that was going to be next to his projection. But we have 11, 18, 16, and 8 that he's played in this series. I think in a blowout, maybe he might get a little bit more extended, or if it's like a 15, 16 point game and they try to build some confidence in a game from one of their young guys that might have to play a meaningful role. Jeff Green's going to probably be out for the first game or two of this Milwaukee series as long as the Nets can kind of get going there. But we've seen even as late as, if he gets up to 20, even like those 20 minutes, he could smash over 20. And I know Marc Gasol is going to be somebody who's garnering some ownership at 3,600. And a lot of people are going to be taking shots on Boston Celtics for a little bit cheaper, but none of those guys are good fantasy point per minute producers, as opposed to Nicholas Claxton, who's close to 1 fantasy point per minute. And so if I'm looking at this correctly, and he didn't end up getting that second rotation because they were up 20 plus and it just didn't matter. And they're like, all right, we'll hang on to the young guy, make sure that he's fresh, good to go for the next game. And, he's been pretty good in those 16, 18 minutes of relief duty, had some great blocks. I think that there's 20 plus there and 0 ownership.
It's an interesting play because here's the issue for me. And I think you actually just mentioned it during that, the end of what you're saying there about Marc Gasol, and Marc Gasol's only $300 more on DraftKings. And I do think in terms of desperation plays that you sort of could see a team go to, because, the Lakers don't want to lose one more here and end up on the cusp of elimination. I think that's what pushes me more towards Gasol. And Gasol still doesn't project that well, because even when you adjust the rates for his court time without Anthony Davis on the year, he's honestly still not been that great per minute overall. I think closer to a fantasy point per minute, but still just wasn't coming up meaningfully based on the number of minutes we had him projected today at Awesemo. But I do think that would put me more on Gasol anyways, just because Drummond and Gasol are 2 of the plays here that I'm sort of trying to pin together, not together, but trying to get to 50% exposure with those guys. And I did get to half my lineups having one of those guys in there. I think to me, Claxton would be a logical thing to do in those lineups that you didn't have, because the price point works and the overall lineup construction is going to look a lot better with a guy at 3,300. The issue though, is if you go to Claxton, like I can force my way to Gasol, but even that, like Fantasy Cruncher didn't want to do that because the projection sucks for him. You're missing out on 8 and you're missing out on Jokic, which are 2 really big parts here that I seem risky, as well as Nurkic too, who I still like, but didn't get enough of today. So that to me is the cause for concern for Claxton. But I would agree, getting more than the field's 1%, like it's not a bad thing to do at all. So
here's kind of what you're doing. The path for him is obviously Gasol failing, and then maybe none of those guys going for 55 plus, like between Nurkic and him. And Jokic can go for 55, and that wouldn't necessarily kill you. What you're basically doing is you're taking an overweight stance on Tatum at a power forward position and saying, go get me 65 plus. You're saying at a point guard position, one of either, if you play LeBron James there, or small forward, if you're playing Kyrie or James Harden or somebody, I'm basically mixing and matching my studs in a different way, in a different path. And I mean, I'm going to have a lot of Celtics as is, and having some Brooklyn guys on the other side, forcing my way to get to some of them and just kind of hoping this game shoots out like pretty much every game has in the series is not the worst way of thinking about it. And, even if it gets wonky, I don't know. It's one of those, I hate saying gut plays, but it's just one of those things where if he gets to 16 minutes, even there's a path at 1 fantasy point per minute that he outproduces that 3,300. I would rather take shots on him than Aaron Nesmith, who actually has ownership. I would rather take shots on him than Grant Williams, who actually has ownership. I'd rather take shots on him than even like I'm conflicted about Peyton Pritchard, because that part of me is, if I'm going to play a point guard and a center, then I basically am only playing LeBron and Tatum as my spend ups. And that seems like a pretty chalk way to do things.
Yeah, I get where you're going with it. And I certainly don't mind getting a little bit of exposure to guys in that range. Certainly, decreasing the ownership product on these shorter slates is a big part of it. And if Claxton's going to be 1% owned, you can pretty much play all the chalk besides him and nobody will be there. So something to keep in mind. I think we saw that with Robin Lopez yesterday too, though.
Exactly.
Closer to 2% for him.
exact same thing. And I think Robin Lopez had a clearer path for sure than what this is. And so I'm saying that this is uncomfortable, but this is kind of the thing that if I'm trying to win the $20 like one Chris Spags did, I got to make some uncomfortable plays. I got to play Nerlens Noel when he's dinged up and isn't in the starting lineup. So I think Claxton here, if we get some extra run, that's probably enough talking about Nick Claxton, but he's a guy that I'm making a strong stance on just to try to hit that guy. And there's a huge opportunity cost at center. So I'm not suggesting you necessarily tail me with 25% of your lineups, but having him in your pool, mixing him, matching, not the worst idea ever.
Yep, I think it's a good one. Let's talk about the super chat from Malcolm. Shout out to him sending a $10 super chat in for Lakers versus Sun, who for captain and MVP for Fanduel and GPP. I will just talk to you guys briefly about the ownership that got an update here. And again, this is also part of our NBA Express package, so you can get the showdown data for all the playoffs here for just $4.95 a week. So keep that in mind for yourself, because it's really the best way for showdowns in particular to know where the field's going to go, and that's a big part of everything. LeBron's going to be the chalk captain. For me, always move away from the chalk captain on DK is the move. I would say Ayton looks live to me as a captain. I think Drummond / Gasol would be interesting captain plays at much less ownership. And then for FanDuel, the ownership looks like it'll be going towards LeBron at the MVP by a pretty wide margin. So Booker, Ayton, Paul at MVP, I guess would be the move, though FanDuel's weird enough, and I don't play a FanDuel single game enough to confidently say much about it. But Eric, for you, for a DraftKings captain and a FanDuel MVP, which way would you want to go?
Oh, God. So, I mean, we want to talk about my other ridiculous possible play today. Just be ready. Markieff Morris could end up starting in this game. And I think him at 1K, I mean, he seems like more of a flex play there, but just be on the lookout for him to possibly be a guy. I'm not sure. I haven't played with the salaries there, but that might be a guy that you can play that gives you access to playing LeBron, Ayton, Booker, Chris Paul, and maybe somebody else. I think that might be something to consider if you think everybody's going to come in around 40 to 55 fantasy points. Not the worst way, but probably a guy that would make more sense for flex. I think if I'm taking one ceiling guy, I mean, I would try to make LeBron work because he's just such a higher projected play compared to everybody else in that game. And more times than not, you're going to be able to plug a couple pieces here and there. But now that KCP's ruled in, I don't know what his captain ownership will get to. Make sure you're kind of refreshing the projections on that. But he would be somebody intriguing just because he's cheap enough where I could probably fit in 2 or 3 studs and mix and match, and definitely provides a 3-point upside if he's going to be playing any kind of the meaningful minutes he's been playing in this series. And obviously, hopefully he's not limited, but I'd be willing to take that shot if I'm trying to make like one lineup in a large field GPP to win everything.
Yeah, for me, that's sort of the way I view it too. That's why I always take the LeBrons, or, not the LeBrons necessarily, but whoever's the highest owned captain now, especially when it's by a wide margin. That's why I just eliminate them right away, because I think you can play them at utility. LeBron, like, I would probably play 100% utility. If not, actually, I'd put them at 100. I think there's no reason not to. But to me, you just get that ownership product by going to somebody else. The captain is one thing for a single entry, where your showdowns, you're still going to probably be chopping it with a certain amount of people, but that's one way to at least give yourself a better chance of taking it down. So different approaches for different entry levels.
Different
money time in a second here, but we got one super chat from Brad Kaufman. Harris or Covington is the question he's asking. No site given, but I think no matter what site is on, for me, that would be Covington.
Yep, Covington for me too. And we were on the show last Tuesday and we got a lot of things right. Harris went completely nuts, and we still ended up at the field, I believe, as we were going back and forth on that. So it didn't end up being the apocalypse. He ended up a little bit lower owned than we were expecting, but going to be Covington for me. He's just going to have a couple more of these games going forward where he's just going to go nuts. And I saw people bashing him in. How many times have people been bashing him in YouTube chat? He's been pretty good the last two, 39, 36 minutes, 29.25 to 26.75 DraftKings points, and $100 price bump is not enough to get me off of Covington under 5K playing those kind of minutes.
As you may have been able to tell with my discreet hat flip there, it is in fact money time. So hit that like button for us if you can. We got almost 2,000 people in here and not even 600 likes. So get us to a respectable 600 likes here. I think that's a reasonable ask, given that basically just brain dumping everything we have on the slate for you guys. So help us out. Hit that like button if you can. And let's get to the top 5 plays according to our ownership projections, our top 5 owned plays, not the top 5 plays, to be clear, the top 5 owned plays on DK and FanDuel. Maybe the top 5 plays for Eric, because they're all chalk. That's why. That's what you love. There you go. I appreciate you not giving the full figure. What a classy gentleman trying to not get us into trouble. Jason Tatum, actually, that would not get us in trouble, by the way, either. You give me the finger if you want. Jason Tatum, number 1 at 34%. Number 2, LeBron James on DraftKings. Number 2 at 30% expected ownership. Number 3, Nikola Jokic, 30% expected ownership. Number 4, James Harden at 27% expected ownership. And number 5, Devin Booker at 26% expected ownership. And I feel like this is something with the ownership recently where I don't think the algorithm is quite capturing people's enthusiasm to cram in anybody who's good value, where Seth Curry yesterday was just shy of 60% in the main DK GPPs that I was seeing, or, maybe closer to 55% for Seth Curry, but still in that range. I don't know who's going to take that jump up, but there's somebody here who's going to be in this range. And I think it's not going to be all the high price guys.
We just saw Peyton Pritchard drop down way below 20%
he did drop
again.
A lot. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Which,
see, these are the kind of things. And again, it's a constant ebb and flow. This is not a 10 game slate where things are going to change 2 to 5% leading up to it. Like, if people have a different construction, or if they start finding themselves on a different path, things are going to change drastically leading up to lock. And I guess I'm surprised at James Harden's ownership up there, because at 10-6, he's my favorite guy to get to on Brooklyn out of the spend up guys. I think he just has, the highest triple double bonus. I could see him breaking the slate more times than not. Kevin Durant and Kyrie, Greg Ehrenberg talked about it a little bit on the tip off together. He really was just hammering home the point that Kyrie and Kevin Durant have to do it scoring the ball, and James Harden can do a myriad of things to get there. And I like getting to James Harden there, but maybe not at 27% when I can just go to Jokic and Tatum. And I just feel so much more secure about playing both of them. Getting cheap with a guy at point guard like Pritchard, I don't know, that still feels like the chalk way to go. But if not, I'm happy to just kind of make my stand with those two on the spends ups, because I've got enough sketchy value that I'm mixing and matching that I'm happy to do it.
It also wouldn't shock me to see Covington be the guy who takes a big jump up, because I know he was popping up in like 100% of the fantasy cruncher projection optimization I was doing. And I think that's one that people have been down on Covington, but 2 good box scores in a row, I think might be enough to lure people back in, and maybe a reason, I don't know, to cut some Covington exposure.
Maybe a reason to I saw you die in front of me right there. You just like, oh, the words that I'm saying are not good, and this is bad. It was like a reality check for yourself.
I tried to cut my Covington exposure, much like Peyton Pritchard, and still got him at 48%, because these are the guys who I think are kind of unavoidable constructs of the lineups that are going to look best. So keep that in mind if you're trying to play different kinds of lineups. Just get different. Don't play those two guys. On FanDuel, top 5 owned plays: Jason Tatum projected for 42% ownership. Number 2, Devin Booker projected for 40% ownership. Number 3, James Harden projected for 34%. Number 4, Kyrie projected for 32%. And number 5, Nikola Jokic projected for 31.6%. And then Evan Fournier not far behind. So there's a little bonus one for all our FanDuel people who sometimes feel like they are not adequately represented, especially after today the site's issues, but it should be good to go now. So have fun over there, guys. No value on FanDuel in here, and FanDuel is a little bit easier generally to not play that specious value. But Eric, where you have Tatum, Booker, Harden, Irving, Jokic, how do you get to these guys? I guess would be the first question I have. And then second of all, so any of them seem a little bit overowned to you?
So yeah, the small forward position is kind of the make or break spot of this entire slate. If we're going to bring it back to a tip off narrative where we talk about, what could possibly kill us. I think point guard's pretty straightforward. I don't think you need to be getting too crazy there. There's nobody who projects out well. I think Alex Caruso and Monte Morris, you can have shares of just by necessity. But like for me, I've eliminated everybody for the most part. Like Facundo Campazzo, Cameron Payne, all those guys are not in my pool over on FanDuel today. Kyrie Irving, I'm going a tiny bit under, but like Damian Lillard, Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, like those are the 3 that I'm kind of going way overweight to on FanDuel. And I feel good about it. Like Kyrie is kind of a product of it. I guess I'm just below the field there, but small forward, Evan Fournier, 5,500, Michael Porter Jr., 6,500. Like those are going to be very popular plays. And LeBron James and Kevin Durant, if they go for the 55 or 60 plus and the other positions don't, you're going to be kicking yourself because you should have saw it coming. But that's a whole small forward position. This is probably the most stacked position on the slate. And I don't know how many times I've said that ever on FanDuel where that was like the best position, but that's kind of the way I feel about it. And I mean, center's stacked every day, but you basically have 3 guys to pick from there with Jokic, Nurkic, 8, and one of them is going to find a way to go off. And, Claxton, you can play at a power forward. Maybe it's not as crazy as what I'm saying over on DK, just because he's 3,900 and there's nobody else really underneath that I want to take shots on. But yeah, everything you said sounded like about appropriate ownership.
Colin Boer, one of our regulars in YouTube chat, just grab this question real fast. We'll take some of the premium Slack, and then we'll talk about the rest of the slate as well. So get your questions in if you want. We're going to jump around a little bit because everybody's covered everything we needed to. With all the Rocco love, is Carmelo an option? there isn't really a pivot to Covington that I could think of. I think even we've seen Norman Powell be really good. And actually part of the reason I played a lot more Norman Powell last time these guys played was I thought, oh, look, I don't want to play Covington today. I played so much Covington in the last game. I'll get less Covington, get more Powell. Covington still got there because he's not shooting that much anyway. So it really doesn't matter. He's been rebounding better. They're maybe running a little bit hot on rebounding. So maybe Nurkic is like the direct play who sucks away from him. But I think minutes wise, like it would be like Derek Jones getting more minutes really. And that's not going to happen. And Melo getting minutes over Covington. Like if you want to get Michael Porter Jr. going, just give him minutes over Covington, I think is one way to do that with Melo. So I don't think Covington has a real pivot play, Eric, unless you're seeing it differently than I am.
Yeah, not a pivot play on Portland. There's pivot plays in the range. FanDuel, I'm looking at Crowder, Gordon. You could go down to Millsap, who has had some upside, but I don't really want to be playing whatsoever. Just seems a little gross. Yeah, I mean, Covington for me is just a play and deal with it. It would be surprising for him not to. I mean, maybe he doesn't end up optimal, but it would be surprising if he didn't end up in the winning lineup for me. And maybe that's a reason to take even more of a heavier stance on him, just because he sits in a range where you kind of need a guy that's going to be playing that many minutes. And it just feels better and more secure than, completely dipping on all of your value over on DK especially. But yeah, I love Covington today. Really hard to get away from.
Yeah, I think the pivot play that I got the most of, and it's actually a guy you talked about, but I wasn't ready to go there yet. But Markieff Morris is a guy that I got a little bit more of at minimum salary. If he shoots the lights out, maybe steals a few minutes away from Kuzma, maybe somehow even starts that game. I don't think that's likely, but there's minutes for him. Like he's projected for 20 minutes from Awesemo today. So I think if you're not going to play him on DK, that is one that I got more than I probably should have. Same thing.
Did you just see Jordan Klein in the he had the Suns out guns out a second ago. He just disappeared. But oh my God, it caught me so off guard. I was just so shocked because I hit the screen for like a second, was going through my process. Look at this man. Look at him.
Look at this beefcake here, just strutting around.
Moves to Marina Del Rey, becomes a nice piece of cake. That's what he becomes. Bite me off a piece of that sweet cake. Oh my Lord.
We do have one super chat to hit on, but let me jump to the premium side. You know what, Eric, I shouldn't take credit for your greatness. Clearly you bring it out on your own though.
I'm just me every day. And I think that, consistency is key. Sure. I would say this is kind of the funny thing. People maybe are like, oh, you're putting on an act for YouTube or what. I'm like, no, this is me every day living my life. Poor Melanie. It's poor Melanie.
Just having fun out here. Just complimenting our friend. Compliment your male friends as much as you would compliment a woman. That's what I'd say. So if we're going to objectify Jordan, make him feel pretty. That's what is that on his shirt?
What is that?
I don't know. Semen? I don't know. Oh, pineapples, it would seem.
Oh, I love pineapples. That's my golf head cover. Dude, I love you so much. Oh, man.
Chuck Seaman. GT asking, he's getting more Monty Morris than Pritchard and Crunches for a FanDuel GPP. Do we have any thoughts? I don't mind Monty Morris. He is personally, I don't think a guy that I got much of, if any. He projects decently. On DK, the price tag, though, a little more onerous, so I went to cheaper guys. But on FanDuel, I'm not playing there today, Eric, so I don't know if you have any strong lead, but like Morris projects fine to me, so I think he's live as a pivot if you feel comfortable with it.
I have him in one of my 3 lineups. It's more of a product of I needed a dude who was under 4,600 to play and wanted to try to peg somebody who was underneath 10%, and that's what he is. So not somebody I'm super enthusiastic about. He's been pretty consistent. Like I will say, I wouldn't be shocked if he did go out and express not a crazy upside by any means, but we did see him get up to 30 minutes. He's played 25 the last 2. So he has potential to get 25 plus for sure. And, maybe that's all you need on this slate. It's hard to really predict what you need in that range yet, because it's really going to depend on how many of these guys underneath 4K, like a Peyton Pritchard, are really going to go off for less. But yeah, Monty Morris is just fine by me.
Soul Dope asking Pritchard and Gasol thoughts on FanDuel. Man, I think they're both
do not play
fine
Gasol on
DK.
FanDuel. That's insanity. He's 5,200. Don't do it.
I think that was what I was thinking. He reminds me of the Taj Gibson play the other day where you could easily be left holding the bag. Like on FanDuel, I might be more inclined to play Drummond, I think, at 1%.
Yes, you should. And not only that, but we know that he can go out there and get you some stocks. He hasn't of late, but yeah, he definitely, I would rather take the shots at Drummond at 7K than Marcus Gasol 5,200. And maybe I'm wrong about that because, I mean, we just saw Marcus Gasol have the only 30+ point center game for the Lakers here between the two of them in this series. But well, actually, no, you had Andre Drummond in game 1. Wasn't it game 1 or game 2? He played well in one of them. I can't remember, but yeah, Andre Drummond, I would definitely rather have, I think, than Gasol.
And then Jordan Reeves asking the direct question that we were just talking about, but it's for cash. Pritchard or Monty Morris. I was thinking Marcus Morris. Monty Morris for FanDuel cash. I think it's got to be for cash. It's got to be Pritchard.
Yeah, it's got to be Pritchard. Hang on. What are you doing on FanDuel cash where those are your 2-point guards? Like I don't know what the builds are. I don't know. I mean, I haven't screwed around with it that much. I mean, Kyrie and Lillard are your 2 highest owned point guards, and it's a pretty sketchy position. I don't know. I would probably be inclined to try to in cash. I don't know. Maybe you can't make that work. I haven't played around with it enough to know for cash what I would be doing, but I got to tell you, other than Kyrie, Lillard, and Paul, it is a bad position on FanDuel.
Also seems like people panicking a little, and I guess we didn't talk about this directly, but Romeo Langford starting for Boston. It's not Peyton Pritchard starting, and I'm not surprised by that at all.
That's what they did last game.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
Yeah, that was the same way it was, and I think that's the same way I would expect it to be. So yeah, Pritchard's going to earn minutes off the bench. He certainly can lose minutes. There's a little more insecurity to the minutes because of it. But honestly, if he started and was unproductive anyway, there probably would have been insecurity to the minutes because they just need to win this game desperately. That's the whole point of it. So to me, they're going to go to Pritchard if things are running poorly. They're going to, I think, be less likely to go away from Pritchard now. Though somebody else heats up, if Romeo Langford somehow shoots the lights up, then yeah, he's going to take minutes directly away. But Pritchard, to me, like the play doesn't change at all by Romeo Langford starting. And I would also say too, I don't know if you feel differently, but Romeo Langford still not a play for me today.
Yeah, if he were unowned, he'd be a play for me, but that's the problem is that he's not unowned and people targeted him. I mean, I targeted him 2 games ago was, and I kind of needed a play. Was it Sunday? I think it was the Sunday late slate, I think is what I was looking at. And it was kind of him and Pritchard kind of picking straws between the two, and Pritchard in the $18 ended up like 27%. And Emac and I were going back and forth in Slack, just how floored we were. We were planning our presidential run for Emac and me as his vice president. And we just happened to talk a little basketball on the side. And we were both surprised Pritchard got to his ownership that he did. He didn't end up burning us that much, but yeah, Nesmith, not a play for me today.
Way to catch those EMAC coattails. I'm sure that's one. He'll take you right to the bank. FanDuel last guy in, Morris or Williams at power forward. For me, that would be Morris.
Yes.
Yeah. We got Greg 99, DK single entry, Bridges or Covington. Single entry, I think Covington's going to be owned higher. I'd still go Covington. And Harrison asking thoughts on Tristan Thompson as a pivot from the field on DK. I got to say he looks really low owned, and I do think there's a pathway for him to earn minutes, but he has to do some good rim protection. He has to do some stuff that he really hasn't been doing much of this whole season, really, but especially the series. I think Tristan's a fine play. The price tag just could be a little bit lower, but at 3% ownership, I wouldn't hate on it at all.
So I did a lot of digging on him. One of my favorite props on the board is the under of 10.5. If you head over to OddsShopper, you can sort by expected win percentage on some of these props, and it can be a print fest, especially in the postseason. Some of the lines can be a little inefficient. I don't necessarily know what's going on when Tristan Thompson gets limited. Steve Nash, during that game that I was watching on Sunday, talked about how they needed to limit Tristan Thompson on the offensive boards. He had 9 offensive rebounds in game 3. Game 4, they just basically double boxed him out, shut him down. Tristan, looked like he was going to possibly get there, but only he got held to 6 rebounds after being in double digits the first 3 games of that series up until then. I think Tristan's probably a guy that I'm just going to be all right not having. Under 10%. Yeah, that sticks out. And if he gets to 30 minutes, that's going to be somebody that you might want to have some tournament exposure to, but can't play everybody, and center is so good. I find it tough to think that he has enough usage with 9.4 usage, 9.7 usage in 2 of the last 4 to really get you there scoring. So pass for me.
Dean is saying last guy, this is a super chat, last guy in a high dollar DK tournament, Crowder, Kuzma, or Monty Morris. I got to make sure to have my Kuzma projection right, but
Crowder, Kuzma, or Monty Morris. I mean, how chalky is the rest of your lineup? Do you want to leave $200 on the table? What's the field size? And my favorite play of the 3 is definitely Jay Crowder. That game is tough to gauge, but I mean, 4,700 for Jay Crowder. He's going to be playing low 30s minutes. I got to like that a lot. Kuzma, for $100 less, he's coming in a tiny bit lesser owned, but I feel more secure about Crowder. I mean, Kuzma he hasn't exceeded 25 minutes here. And half of that game last time out was with Anthony Davis off the floor. So I don't know, like Kyle Kuzma could probably get capped at 26, 27 minutes. And I think there's more of a chance of that. So if I'm playing a secure thing in a small field, expensive tournament, I'd rather go Crowder than those other 2.
Yeah, so I have actually equal amounts of Kuzma and Crowder today, both at 35% for me. So I guess I don't have a strong lean. I think for a high dollar one, I might be inclined to take Kuzma just because he's going to get the shot to earn minutes, that he could get jerked around a little bit. Maybe I'm making the case for Jay Crowder inadvertently because he's probably not going to get jerked around very much.
Right.
The Kuzma, they kind of need him to score, I think, to just be viable in this game. So I'd go Kuzma's way. And I think for a high dollar one, that makes the most sense. And the ownership, ownership looks pretty flat. Let's see. I think we've gotten all the super chats here. Talk to me about Phoenix, because I know you were very bullish on them. I'm bullish on one part of Phoenix, and then I think less bullish on the other part. So I think we might be running at loggerheads here, but I know you mentioned Chris Paul a lot in the tip off. So tell me your thoughts about Chris Paul and whatever other Suns you're really feeling here.
Yeah, I like Chris Paul at 6,600 on DraftKings. I think if we saw anything remotely close to what we saw in game 4, where he was effective in multiple ways, impacting the game, was distributing fine, and his shot looked fine. He's still 0 for 3 from 3. Maybe just stop shooting threes because it seems like he's labored. I don't know if you saw that possession at the end of the third quarter where he shot the ball underhanded from half court. Did you see that at all? Like, I did not. His shoulder was so beat up that he couldn't even like shoot it from half court. And he like underhand chucked it and he missed by like 80 feet. It's fine. But it was still entertaining that Chris Paul was just like, well, I'm not going to miss an opportunity to shoot here because, you know, what does he care about a shot attempt? Can I also say that that's been bugging me these playoffs? Some of these rotation players or other people at the end of quarters, why are you not chucking it from half court? Why are you worried about your field goal percentage in the freaking playoffs? And it's happened at least 3 or 4 times where they just got inbounded and they didn't shoot. I get it in the regular season in a game that doesn't matter for your seeding or whatever else that you're not chasing it, but I don't care if it's got a 2% chance to go in. You shoot it at the end of a half, no matter what, in the playoffs.
I love you're embracing your inner Fox Sports talking head here. And I agree that you should get that shot up, especially when most teams, like for advanced analytics, they cut out heaves and those like shots that don't really matter anyway. So it doesn't.
Playoffs. They're talking playoffs. They can't win a game.
It does not matter to get paid for these guys for the most part. We got actually a request here from our social media team that I will just mention right now. We have a giveaway going on the @Awesemo NBA Twitter handle, so go check it out. Should be the pinned tweet on there. All you have to do is answer, will LeBron James or Devin Booker have more points tonight? If you reply to the tweet with your answer and you're following Awesemo NBA and Awesemo_com, you can enter to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. So again, a simple guessing game there, and then they'll just randomly give it out from there. So make sure to go. I'll actually drop the link in the chat. It might be coming through chat from Nightbot anyway, but here it is for you guys. Go check out this pin tweet and just leave your guess as to Booker or LeBron who scores more today, and you can enter to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. Also, make sure to hang out with us here because we're going to talk more about the slate overall. So if you have any final questions, you can get them in. We're also going to be talking about No House Advantage, who tonight is offering their first showdown. And actually, they are calling it showdown, which I don't know if that name's going to hold because that might be a trademark. But No House Advantage,
Schmoeshmown.
Yeah, the hoedown. So the playoff hoedown tonight. It is a big one. 1K to first place. Only 240 entries in this one. $10 entry over at No House Advantage. And it is a showdown style single game format for the Lakers and Phoenix game tonight. We'll be talking about that one for a half hour. We'll talk more about whatever you guys want because we got to make sure to get through that half hour in addition to giving the best plays a No House Advantage. But go check them out right now. Go to nohouseadvantage.com. Download No House Advantage in the App Store. Use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up because they will deposit match you up to $20 instantly. And then we will talk at this the showdown slate, this exciting new format for them. Prop betting, we talk about a lot on the show. And one thing too with No House Advantage to keep in mind is that their lines don't move. That is a big part of what we discuss frequently on the tip-offs. So if you don't watch that show, it is a gigantic advantage that I think most of us didn't even know until really covering it every single day, just seeing what they do. Sometimes there are mispricings, missed lines in there too. And it just happens because of the process they have over at No House Advantage. And it's all to the benefit of you because you're just competing against other players. You're not competing against the house. That's why there's No House Advantage. So go check them out and stay tuned. In the next 7 minutes or so, we'll start talking about that a little bit more. Let's keep going through I think we had a couple more questions in the premium Slack that I'll make sure to grab here. Actually, no, we didn't finish our Phoenix takes. So my Phoenix take is I'm not playing Chris Paul.
How dare we?
I'm barely playing Chris Paul today.
Oh God. Okay.
I am playing a good amount of Devin Booker. I am playing an ass load of DeAndre Ayton. And I am
so a week ago on this show, not to toot my own horn, but sub 5%. Cameron Payne did say, and I quote, the best tournament play of the slate. And that was very nice to see screenshots from people, and it was good times. What is it that you don't like about Chris Paul today?
That there are plays I have projected better, and I guess this is part of it too, is that Chris Paul's minutes, I think, are coming in a little lower from Awesemo's data team. So they have him right now at 29.5. He did play 32 last game. So that could be something I'm noticing now. That could be a bit of a data shortfall in my crunching here. But I do think that still I agree with the thesis of the play of not getting as much Chris Paul, because I'm going to be on Marcus Smart a lot. I'm going to be on Peyton Pritchard a lot. I'm going to have a little bit of Monty Morris as well. So like I have some guys at point guard, and I'm just going to hope that Chris Paul doesn't kill me. And if he does, then everybody else will win anyway.
If Chris Paul plays less than 33 minutes, we're not going to do an eyebrow bet. No eyebrow bet. Caught myself. No eyebrow bet. We'll figure out something. I bet we can figure out something, but there's no way Chris Paul doesn't play 34 plus minutes in this game.
Yeah, I don't know how good I feel about him playing under 30 minutes, but I do feel like as a median projection, I do get why that's there. So I'm going to use that as my goalpost. And as a result, I do have a lot more Devin Booker, which on DraftKings is more of a contrarian play. On Fanduel, as we talked about, Devin Booker will be one of the chalkier plays on the site over there. But Ayton's one that I think we probably will be in agreement on more so. I think Booker and Paul, to me, like you could play them together. I do think they are sort of leverage against each other. But Ayton, to me, is one guy where if the Lakers decide to put Montrezl Harrell out for any more minutes at all, like, oh boy, Ayton's going to destroy him. I think he's still going to continue to destroy Drummond. I think he's going to continue to destroy Gasol. There isn't really a counterpunch here, barring foul trouble, that they have to Ayton. So to me, Ayton is my highest exposed player on the slate, Eric. And I feel like I might have said that earlier, but he's a player that it's been the case for me every single time that they've been on the slate. And that's going to be the case again tonight.
People just have been under projecting his minutes. He's still under 8K over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, his price is kind of a joke compared to what he's been doing. 7,400 for him on this spot, like with what we've seen out of him. And if we're going to get him under 25% owned, yeah, I mean, you want to get to him. I have 100% of him on DK, not on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Ayton is just, to me, a very strong play, 41.6 fantasy point projection from Awesemo today. And I would make him one of the stronger values on the slate, in addition to just being a strong raw points play. So to me, everything I've talked about him every show he's been on. And hopefully you guys know by now, just keep playing Ayton until the wheels fall off that price. And we are not quite there yet. How are you handling LeBron on the slate? I think we talked about him briefly earlier. We've talked about some of the bigs from the Lakers, but LeBron projected for around 30% ownership, it looks like, on DK. Actually didn't pull the most updated ownerships into my sheet yet. So probably comparable numbers on FanDuel if I'm remembering correctly. But LeBron in the spot does seem like he's got to do more. I think Adam raised a good point here that people will probably target the Lakers a little bit more than they should, just based upon Anthony Davis is out. People always think that leads to a lot more production for the other star player in particular, but also the rest of the team. But LeBron, to me, at his price tag on DK, 9,800, he's cheaper than Tatum. I think that's sort of my main logic in getting there. And I'll be with the field, I think, a little bit above it. So how are you handling LeBron?
So, I mean, yeah, I wrote about him a lot last night because he just seemed like he was going to be a big talking point. I thought the ownership would be there a little bit more than it is, but it's already higher than what I would want to be paying in this spot. First of all, I have concerns over his health. We haven't seen up to 40 minutes of him yet. He's coming off of that torn up ankle where, he sat out for 2 months and then came back and they kind of were limited. And, he played that New Orleans game, tweaked his ankle again. He was up and down here. The minutes have started to trend up. He's sitting just short of 40, but I don't know if he can really get to 40. Whereas there's so many other guys like Jason Tatum. I'm pretty sure he's playing over 40. Damian Lillard, pretty sure he's going to play over 40. Like there's a lot of these guys that I think I'm just getting more minutes out of even. And you talked about it just a second ago too, but James is a 1.5 fantasy point per minute player with Davis off the floor this year, 1.36 when they're together. Not a gigantic disparity. I mean, enough. 0.14 can be meaningful, but this game has the lowest total on the slate. This is probably the worst matchup you could possibly get defensively for a small forward or for a point guard. Or, LeBron James is LeBron James. Would it shock me if he went out and put up 40 plus? No, but he's owned like it already. And so I'm going to fade.
And one more flag that I have to plant before lock, because we just haven't gotten there. We talked about Jokic, Michael Porter Jr. I will be a little bit above the field again on, and I think honestly wouldn't shock me if his ownership is lower based upon how people have viewed him recently. He has been running so bad, but I do think he was so good during the year that I have to believe there's a bounce back day here. He's not one of my higher exposed players, but he is still a guy I'll be above the field on. So I feel like that's one guy we can cover quickly here. How do you feel about Michael Porter Jr. or any other Nuggets you're going to instead?
Same as you. I love getting to Michael Porter Jr., especially on FanDuel. I think that's just a play that makes way too much sense for me. And so I'm riding right there with you. Let's go.
All right, we got 2 minutes left to lock here, probably less by the time you guys hear that. So get your lineups in if you haven't yet, and hang out with us another half hour. Honestly, if you're playing a no house advantage, that is great for you. It is a very nice prize today for a tournament with just 240 people in there with 1K to first. So go check that out. 2K guaranteed overall, and I have to think they're going to fill this one because 1K to first. This few entries at a $10 entry fee. It's a pretty good price tag. So go check that out now. But we'll also be talking about props in general. So if you want to make some bets here, feel free to hang out with us. We'll cover if there's, God forbid, any news. People still think there's a chance AD might play. I don't think he's unlikely to play. You got to treat guys who are either doubtful or unlikely to play as not playing. So there's no world, Eric, that you thought AD or you think AD might play, right?
No, I mean, it's an MRI on his groin, and he looked like he was walking so gingerly. I mean, it would be a shell of Anthony Davis. It would be really, really strange that they would want to risk that. It's not an elimination game. They're, still 5-point dogs. I did take the Suns side of this. I still feel pretty good that the Suns are going to go out and win this game by more than, I believe the number dropped down to 4.5 is when I got it, but I opened at 5.5. It came down. Public money loves betting the Lakers. And so you can get and capitalize on a little bit of an inefficient line. I think this should be closer to 7.5.
Okay, interesting take. I don't disagree. I like the Lakers a little more. I think generally I guess we can talk more about that now, starting the No House Advantage segment. But I'm intrigued to see how they do because they played down all year, but they also half-assed it all year. And I feel like, that was sort of the public persona as well for it. I do think now, 2-2 here, LeBron, a chance to be going to an elimination game, without AD in the spot. To me, this is the shot you're there to see peak LeBron. If he still has it, if we still can get there, tough matchup for it. But I do think, to me, LeBron props look very appealing, whether you're playing on no house advantage or not.
Yeah, oh, crap. What? Oh, my DraftKings. I'm such a dumb.
Did you not put it in?
Yeah, I just put in the wrong thing. Whatever.
We're gonna live either or for sad Eric here. You weren't playing a lot on DK, right?
No. I wasn't, but I was screwing around. I just feel bad because Claxton was my favorite dude to get here, and I ended up having the Marc Gasol one that came through on it. But no, okay, I've got one of Claxton. Good. Okay, I was just making sure 1 of 3. That's fine. That's fine. I don't feel like a fraud anymore. It's good.
So we'll take these either ors real fast here because they'll still be relevant. It looks like based on the questions that we have. So we'll grab these and we'll talk about no house advantage. Ryan Life Music saying I'm getting 75% Awesemo. I mean Caruso on Fanduel help. That is first. I love that he looks like our boss man Alex Baker, but 75% Caruso is a grave mistake.
Very, very healthy number. Maybe don't do that.
Yeah. KCP or Rivers for a DK GPP with 500 entries. That is KCP for me a lot more.
Same. KCP.
And then CJ and Nurkic or Book and Ayton for FanDuel is the final question here in the premium Slack before we talk no house advantage. So Eric, give me your best possible answer. CJ and Nurkic or Book and Ayton on FanDuel.
We'll go Book and Ayton on FanDuel for sure.
Yeah, I'm too deeply locked in on Book and Ayton, even though Booker going to be a little higher owned on FanDuel for me to go the other way. So Booker and Ayton for me too. All right, let's talk about No House Advantage. If you guys aren't familiar with No House Advantage, first of all, go over to nohouseadvantage.com and use the promo code Awesemo when you sign up to get a $20 deposit match immediately for yourself. And also, you can download them in the App Store. Just search No House Advantage on there. It'll come up. But if you're not familiar with it, it is a peer-to-peer prop site where basically you're doing it in a GPP format. It's the best way to understand it. And this showdown that they're doing today, their $2,000 playoff showdown, is, I believe, their first ever showdown style game that they're having for themselves. So going to be a similar concept to some of the other sites that you are playing on for single game formats. 6 players are going to be in play for you on there. No captain / MVP / though honestly, I wish that No House Advantage had given us an opportunity to A, name this, and B, come up with the titling for a captain or MVP, because Eric, I think you and I in particular would have actually had great fun doing this.
Oh, yeah, no, the swap and sweat would be showing up in full fulfillment. I know your tricks, Dewey. I know your tricks.
I think if I had to, before we get into it, what would you name a single game format, assuming like showdown, and I guess FanDuel doesn't even name there. So what would you name it?
I feel pretty good about my naming abilities for the most part, except for whatever reason, the tip off, we couldn't land on that one until you showed up. That was all you. I know you did, because you're a beast, but I had the slate starter prop report. Yeah, I feel good about those. Let's see. For a single game, about the one timer.
How about this? The sudden death.
Oh my God. That's just genius. I don't even know what to do with myself.
I don't know if it's perfect.
Dude.
I feel like it's because something like with one would be a stronger one, like the like single still seems like it should be in there, but I do like sudden death because it gives a real sense of urgency to each one. And like,
in a world traded by water, there's only one man and one game that can get it done. Oh, it is called Sudden Death, starring Christopher Spags.
So the no house advantage, sudden death, and then the captain. What would the captain / MVP be? That would be, I think Superstar is on Yahoo. Maybe is that rings a bell to me. So it's got to be something like that. I don't know if you have anything.
It'd be the killer. If it's gonna be sudden death, must be the murderer's row.
I would say I would give Legend would be mine. So you have sudden death and Legend would be my number one.
Legend sounds a little pansy to me.
All right. Well, either way, we'll figure it out. We'll keep working through the brainstorming for our friends over at No House Advantage.
We're working on it.
Good news for them is that's free. They just got all that free marketing genius for nothing. But No House Advantage
is Crittenton locked for that format. Javaris Crittenton. I haven't seen that name forever. Wow, what a pull by one Jordan Klein.
Jordan always on the quick on the uptake here. That's what we appreciate our producer Jordan here. All right, let's see the No House Advantage lines right now. So I'm actually gonna
Have you not seen them today?
No, I haven't looked.
Okay, so there are two that are just stone cold locks.
Oh, I did see you guys talk about Drummond on the tip off. So.
Okay, so the first one is the under of 19.5 points for Andre Drummond. You just absolutely, so we have 6 spots. It's basically 4 spots in my opinion, because you're going to just have 6 and 5. You're going to be rotating under of 19.5 for Drummond because, I mean, he's not going to play over 20 minutes. It's a total that's under, it's 207. So you're basically looking at 100 points allocated for the Lakers. If LeBron gets 30 of them, there's 70 left for the rest of the team. Good luck having that be Drummond for 20. And then the second part of that is Dario Saric, who hasn't been in the rotation the last 2 games, has like 11.5 points. He is the stone cold lock for the 6th spot.
Yeah, so this is something, and I honestly didn't ask internally to make sure, but so if he's active but doesn't play, I know you guys talked about this in the tip-off too, but just to sort of reestablish for everybody, if he's active but doesn't play, we're saying the points do count.
Yes, they still count. Yeah, he just has to be on the floor. So I believe it was Greg, we had talked a little bit about where, if a guy's active and he doesn't touch the floor, some books, they basically say no action on the prop. And so that's a way that it can get done. And it's a way that they hedge it out. Even if a guy touches the floor for 1 second, though, you're fine. Dario Saric, I don't think that this is the exact same thing on NHA. He would have to be inactive. If he is active, you can take the under there.
Okay. Because I know that's something we talked about recently and I wasn't sure and I meant to ask and then just didn't do it. But if that's the case, then I agree that one to be the 6-pointer and a very obvious 6-pointer. It's also worth pointing out too for No House Advantage, our business development gal, Leslie, was mentioning earlier in the day that you now optimize just using their site. So it's not even one where you have to use a fancy crunch or anything like that. You can just use a No House Advantage optimizer. So make sure to check that out as well. If you're trying to put in more lineups, it's one way to do it. Obviously, it's not the biggest tournaments out there like this one today that we're talking about with 1K up top, 2K guaranteed. It's only 210 entries in there. So if you're MMEing, like it's not going to be the biggest lift on there, but for some of the bigger slates that they're going to have, make sure to check it out because that's basically a free optimizer for you guys to use. The one that we don't even have to provide. You can make it all yourself. All you have to do is assign general points rankings for them. If you think that's going to be worth, somewhere between 10 to 7 points, that's how you go on that. And that's also worth pointing out real fast here because as a showdown slate, it's only 6 points you can have here, but you're giving your highest likelihood prop or what you're viewing as the highest likelihood prop 6 points, second highest 5 points, et cetera, on down the list. And the Dario Saric one, I would agree. I guess the question we would have though, because it is a single game / sudden death / showdown format, that we do have a lot of people who will go to this prop because I do think for No House Advantage in particular, Awesemo is the leading provider of No House Advantage props. It's not us touting or anything. That's just a thing out there. There's not a ton of sites doing it at the level of depth that we are. Is it possible that Dario Saric at captain or at the so-called captain, the 6-point spot, at the legend spot, is it possible that this is somehow a trap one or one that maybe you can go a different way, or would you just immediately put it as a 6-pointer and then just not worry about it?
I would immediately put it as a 6er. I'm looking at the contest rules right now. Players who are ruled out prior to a game beginning will receive 0 points regardless of the over or under selection. So that means that you are just fine taking the under of one Dario Saric. He will be active for the game. He just probably won't play is basically what I'm saying. And yeah, he would be the 6-pointer for me. Like automatically take the under of his points, take the under of his rebounds, take the under of his points and rebounds, take the unders. Everybody gets an under.
Yeah, I think that because of the fact that he's probably not going to play, and if he does, he's going to play fractional amounts of minutes that come because of Ayton foul trouble. I might be the most inclined to take the points plus rebounds plus assists just in case there's some pathway here for him to earn a few minutes with Ayton in foul trouble or something, and then he gets there in one category. So I think that's one thing to me where that's still 100%er, and I think a little bit more safety than just points.
Frank Kaminsky's been playing the backup 5 though. Frank Kaminsky the last 2 games has been the backup 5. He played 7 minutes in each of those, I believe it was. Yep, 2 games of 7 minutes, the 27th and the 30th. So what were Sarge's minutes?
Though. Like, I think you're right, but there's still a little volatility. I mean, you're definitely you're unequivocally right, but like,
yeah, what day? Like what corner? It's whatever Chris Paul says. Like Chris Paul says, I want Frank Kaminsky out there for 5 minutes. That's going to be what they do. I mean, let's be serious. Yeah. He gets to call the shots.
And I guess the part of it that would concern me is that if Kaminsky, like I think Kaminsky's getting minutes, and I didn't look this up in Popcorn. Actually, I guess I could do it right now on Popcorn Machine that closely. But when he's in there, he's been in there against. He wasn't in there against Harrell for that first stint. He was in there against Gasol for the first stint, and then the second stint last game, he was in there against also Gasol. So I do think that there is a decent shot here that if Harrell's not on the floor, or if Harrell's on the floor, maybe they'd go a different direction. That includes Saric. So that's something that to me could be a curveball to that, is that he earns a few more minutes that way. But yeah, I think that's your point about the rotation is pretty sound. Either way, Saric is going to be the 6-pointer. It's just a matter of which one you choose.
Correct. And I mean, it's that and Drummond. Yeah, they're both solid unders, but Drummond's going to play 20 plus minutes, and we know that he can be a fantasy point producer, more so tons of rebounds than anything else. But yeah, I think those 2 props are just kind of easy plug and plays, and then figure out what you want to do with the rest of your lineup. And, you know, Enes Kanter, somebody that 8.5 is a gigantic number for him as well. For the rebounds, I think that's a phenomenal under to be taking. So those 3 are kind of like my plug in de facto, like start your lineup there. And then if you want to try to have some game theory on the bottom 3, we can kind of mix it around. But those 3 specifically are just phenomenal.
And we had a question here about Harrell that just went away. Let's see. Oh, we got a lot of questions about Harrell. Jake asking for NHA, could you guys go over Harrell? Let me look at Harrell's props here and to sort by this real fast. So Harrell's props on there for the day. Actually, are they on our site? Yeah, they are. Okay. So his points prop at 9.5. He's we haven't projected for 0. I wouldn't project him for 0, but 9.5 points is the line there. 4.5 is the rebounds line. 13.5 is the points plus rebound line. I think for Harrell, I would still feel most comfortable taking points plus rebounds. But to me, though, he is still a tier behind some of the other guys that we talked about, where I think the Saric prop is a little bit stronger. I think that, well, we should talk more about the Drummond prop. I think the Saric prop's a little bit stronger. But Eric, how are you feeling about Harrell's props here? Are you willing to play a lot of unders? I guess in the lineup would be another question.
I am playing all unders. I think that the one I just put together has 5 unders and 1 over at the very bottom. And we can talk about that one later. But like for the most part, there's some large numbers here that I think you just need to be shorting. It's a game with a 207.5 total. It's a pretty gross game, but it's going to be super entertaining. It's the game. It's strange because from a fantasy aspect, you know, we have Ayton, we have Chris Paul for me, and then, you know, a smattering of other options. But I think we're both heavier on Celtics value and some of those pieces. And like from a fantasy perspective, this isn't going to be entertaining, but this is definitely the game that I'm looking forward to watching the absolute most tonight, because you could get a LeBron nuclear event. You could get Chris Paul going nuts. You could get, this is the game with the most implications to the postseason period.
So here's the thing with Drummond, and I get that the under looks very likely if you do put him in for, I think, what do we have him for Awesemo today? We had him in for 22 minutes. So it does make it really hard for him to get. And honestly, no matter what the outcome is, I think it's still going to be pretty hard for him to get over on 19.5 points. That said, I do think this is one where I might be more inclined to take the points under than even consider the points and rebounds, because if he gets to 28 minutes, like he could put up 15 boards and 13 points. And I think that wouldn't be a crazy one. And, you know, or I guess his prop line is 31.5, but let's say, what's the line then? Let's say he gets 15 and 15 then, and then you're just sweating out that last one. Like there is a pathway for Drummond to get there. And I think overall, relative to Drummond, as we talked about before, like I did get 25% Drummond and 22% Gasol today. I think that those guys are both collectively, like one of them's going to get minutes. And all it takes is Drummond starting hot here. And I do think there's a pathway for him to get the minutes, even though Gasol's like the better play so far. So to me, for Drummond, he's one that if you're playing multiple lineups at no house advantage, I think I get putting him in the 6 or 5 pointer in 1 or 2 of those. But I think trying to take one where you don't play him or you take the over even on one of these. I think in particular, points plus rebound is still pretty lofty, but maybe rebounds over. Like, I think taking an over on Drummond is one way to get different from the field right away today, because everybody's going to play him straight away as an under.
Correct. And they probably should. I mean,
they should. You should more often than not. You should 9 times out of 10.
Correct. But I think what you're saying is correct. I think, with Harrell not necessarily having the projection there. I mean, Harrell, we have projected to play 6 minutes. So yeah, Harrell's a better under, I think, in that spot even. And yeah, what you're talking about with the rebounds plus points. And I mean, maybe like that's kind of the game theory aspect of it too, where, you can take one of these other unders that are only difference by like 2 or 3%. And if people are playing on our site and they're just sorting it by the projection and taking the top one, if that other one comes through, like more times than not, the other one is as well. But like, you do have that small little window of gap where one hits and the other doesn't. And in those events, you have a huge amount of leverage because, 50 people will play the one that's the highest projected. And then the one person who takes the one that's 2% lower, that's less likely to happen, it'll win all the money.
Yeah, so that's definitely one thing that I would consider overall relative to the approach. I guess let's just talk about some of the other high probability unders or overs. And I don't think there were any terribly high probability overs. Actually, the Kuzma points is one over. Yeah. That's
the one that's like you could put that in the 3, 4, 5 confidence slot. Again, Saric is just going to be my de facto guy. I think, Montrezl Harrell, now that we see that projection there, I think that makes a lot of sense to go to him as well and be taking the under of, whatever you want there. And then, piecing that together with the over of 6.5. I mean, Kyle Kuzma is going to have to be out on the floor 25 minutes at least, it would seem, in this spot, and going to have to score if the Lakers want to keep this competitive without AD. And 11 shot attempts last game, sign me up.
Yeah, I have Kuzma projected for 12.4 points today, so that looks like one that I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't be able to get there. So I'm with you. I think, to me, Saric and Kuzma, the Kuzma over the Saric unders, generally to me would be the best place to put in your 6 and 5 pointers. And then the Drummond one too, it does, according to Awesemo, might be a good one to put in the 5, but I have a little more confidence in the Kuzma one just because I think there's more volatility to it, whereas Kuzma we know is going to get more run and they also need more points. So those two things to me put me on Kuzma more. One of the other higher probability overs is the over on campaign's assist at 3.5. And this is one, Eric, where I think if you believe that Chris Paul's healthy and that he can play more minutes, he did play 32 last game. If he gets to 36, 37, those margins for campaign are getting narrow enough that I don't know that I would love this one. And I do think that this is one people will plug in immediately because they'll see it and they'll go like, oh yeah, 75% chance. Sounds good. This is one where I wouldn't mind moving away from it or even maybe considering going on the under.
He is kind of a stay away. It's the volatility that exists. And that might be some risk you should embrace in some DFS formats and, like a showdown format, I think, or on Fanduel, whatever it is. So like for here, I think he's kind of a stay away because I would be trending a little bit on the over because these numbers are pretty low. And if you look at campaign, been really, really effective and has been playing a lot alongside CP3. He played a lot more together the last 2 games than what I was expecting. So I do like kind of trending away from him. But if you had to side on it, I would probably still be siding on the overs of just about everything listed there. I'm not sure what I think our projections have it about exactly correct. But as you said, I think there's just so many positive spots to be going elsewhere that probably just being lighter there is the right move.
So one other over that I like, and I guess there are a couple overs that I do like overall, like the Devin Booker over, that one is a 71% chance of hitting over 1.5 3-pointers. I think for on Awesemo's projection, that one to me is one that I feel pretty good about, though. Again, I am more team Devin Booker today. I'm hoping that the game ebbs a little more his way, but I think that one appeals to me. And I also throw Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's points over in the mix for me as ones that I think would round out my top 6 in terms of just making one lineup here and trying to maybe, follow a good amount of the field, but get a little bit different there. How are you feeling about those two? Are there any other, I guess, you put in where you're like, hey, this one to me feels like a pretty good 3-pointer, 2-pointer, whatever the case may be, that we haven't hit on yet?
So I do focus a lot on 3-pointers on NHA. When I play over there, it becomes a question of, a guy like Giannis was getting 1.5 3-point props. He just doesn't shoot a lot of threes. And when he does, he's generally pretty inefficient at it. I would say the one apprehension I have about over of 1.5 for Devin Booker is that he's only attempted more than 5 threes once in this entire series. That was game 1. He went 3 for 7 in that one. Otherwise, 0 for 3, 1 for 4, 1 for 5. And I think if you're getting 5 or less 3-point attempts, which is what I have him projected for right now, and you'd need to hit 2, so that's 40% from there, I would actually be trending a little bit more on the under of that, or just kind of staying away from the prop, because there are more advantageous paths to go to. But generally do like to target a lot of the 1.5 3-point props, just probably not this one for me today.
All right, we do have a little bit of time here to for this showdown, for the showdown to kick off for No House Advantage. So get in there now. It's hard to sort of estimate if this one's going to full, but I think it would be right now 49 out of 240 entries in there overall, and it is a max 15 entry at the $10 entry fee. But either way, go get over there. Also had some questions about the promo code. It is promo code Awesemo. It'll give you a $20 deposit match, so make sure to take advantage of that as well. That's easy money that you can just put in entries here. You get yourself 4 entries for $20 for yourself here with the $20 we're giving you back. So go get in there now. Playoff showdown, 1K to first place, 2K guaranteed in it. So go check it out and play at nohouseadvantage.com or download No House Advantage in the App Store now. Any other plays here that you feel good about for LeBron? He's one guy that we're not hitting on really. And I think the thing for LeBron to me might be to consider staying away, because I think the casual people playing on No House Advantage will be a little bit more inclined to get there than I personally would be. And that's just me, maybe me thinking a little bit too 40 chessier for it. But I think LeBron looks like a fine play, but I do think most of his No House Advantage lines look fairly efficient, unless there's something I'm seeing from Awesemo's, likelihood numbers here. But how are you feeling about LeBron? And I guess, do you have any ideas on an approach for him? Because I think this is one spot where you don't have to play the big names at all. You don't have to worry about LeBron. I think that's one way to get different right away.
Yeah, I think it would be. I'd probably be taking the over on points if I did anything with him. And that makes me really want to stay away, because I think people tend to like the point props even more on NHA. They tend to play those a little bit more. It seems like something that they can target where, points are the things that the casual fan also says, hey, I think he's going to score this many. And I think 24.5 seems like a low number for LeBron in this spot. I think he should be projected closer to 26, 27. What do we have him for? 20. Yep. So 27.9. I think that's just about right for him. There were a couple props around in the market at different books that looked like they were lingering around 28, 29 at some times earlier today. That's come down. It's tempered a little bit, but yeah, I think I would take the over on that. So that makes me want to just kind of stay away from the popular name. And it's closer to 50-50 than it should be to really want to be going that direction. Also, just for everybody that might be tuning in now or is like starting to build lineups and stuff, do not think that you're being crafty by playing Anthony Davis and taking it under there. He is not probably going to be active. If he is inactive, do not play him, because you will get 0 points for it in that slot. But if he's active, like if we get word that he's going to try to play like a couple of minutes here or there, whatever, fire up the under on every single one of his props, because they're too high.
Is there any contrarian prop that you see for yourself here where, like, obviously we are talking about ones at the highest probability, and the best way if you're playing No House Advantage night in, night out is just to really be religious to the No House Advantage projections here and the rates that they're going to be on the over, they're going to be the under. And if you just lined up your ownership projections, but not to give everybody too much of how I would approach a No House Advantage, but just use the prop lines here as a guiding mark for your ownership on there. Just maybe try it out, see how it goes. But is there any here that you feel like, for whatever reason, would be, I think for me, it's going to obviously be the Drummond ones, where I don't have the highest confidence level that he's so safe on the under that I think you could talk me into taking the over on, in particular, his rebounds, but maybe points plus rebounds. That feels lofty. I think rebounds in particular, you could talk me into the over there. But is there one that you would consider going against the Awesemo projections just to get to this guy because you think it's an interesting tournament option?
You're trying to get me fired. Is that what this is? You want me to talk
bad
about
we
our
welcome
projections?
Questioning here. I know that Alex loves intellectual curiosity is what we always advocate for here at Awesemo.
I absolutely love that. One guy that I think you might want to be, well, no, we have him as an over. I was going to say Jay Crowder ended up going for 17 the last time out. Shoots a lot of threes. I mean, he's attempted at least 6 threes in all 4 games here. That ends up kind of increasing your variance going towards, the over on something like 9.5 points or the 2.5 3-pointers made. 2.5 3-pointers made, if you're shooting 7, is still going to be something that's tougher to get to. 3 out of 7. I mean, that's about league like that's closer to the 50 number, or the 40% that you for sure would want to hit to take the over on some of those. But I think taking an over on him isn't going to be a popular thing to do, and taking mini overs in a slow paced, low total game isn't going to be popular. So Jay Crowder taking the over on 9.5 points. I think we have him shaded a little bit on the over there too. I think that I would be fine making that one of my 1 or 2 point plays. And then even like Dennis Schroeder, I got to imagine with no Anthony Davis, there's going to be a plan in place. If they're going to try to get their offense going, Schroeder's got to get going. I mean, this has just been a little ridiculous on his perspective. Like that last game out was one of the most abysmal games that I've seen. And he's looked really bad here in the postseason and from the play-in tournament here on. Dennis Schroeder was talking about wanting to get paid for different stuff. And I don't see it out of him. And we saw 2 pretty decent games in game 2 and game 3, both of those being resounding Lakers wins. I don't think it's any surprise that he played well and they won, because they just need a third option to come in strong. And today they need a second option to come in strong. But I got to think that maybe he can rebound off of the last game, might be taking some overs on some of his points and other props there. But I don't feel great about it. I just think that might be a way to get different too.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it. And it's also worth pointing out too here that there is no Marc Gasol on this slate either. So keep that in mind, that you're not going to find any props for him if you are a Marc Gasol fan, like some of us have been, and I guess we'll be tonight.
You're his biggest fan?
No. You
have his Raptors and Grizzly jersey?
I feel like Greg has been the biggest Marc Gasol. Am I
I thought that was you.
No,
you bring up because you always say Gasol and you say it correctly, and you make sure you take pride in your work is really what it comes down to. And you show respect to one Marc Gasol and make sure that it can crush. Oh yeah, Jordan, that's exactly what I'm thinking, baby. Oh, look at this guy. What an idiot. It's fine. I love you. You're a rich idiot though. That's the thing. I can make fun of you as much as I want. It's not going to change the fact you've won more in the last 2 weeks than I have. And that's a fact.
And yeah, and also I won yesterday too, which is why I felt confident enough to put in my lineups while doing the show, which I don't know if that was too much confidence, but it was happening though. Like I felt like cool, like good proof of concept to not go completely broke, even though I was only playing like one fractional amount of it. Yeah, did not go broke yesterday, thank God. DK though already sending me like, hey, do you want to enter the 555? Like, no, thank you. I think I'm good not entering the $550 per entry 15.
Rinpack Jr.
Like, no, it would take a full Rinpack bankroll for me to start throwing those ones in. No, thank you.
Oh man.
Mikal Bridges is one guy who I just have to throw in a mention for here, where I do think, because I'm not playing him on DFS sites at all today, if I'm playing a no house advantage, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of Mikal Bridges in the mix, maybe the over on his points plus rebounds plus assists, just because I think the pathway is there for him to be useful today. And, for DFS sites, he's sort of a direct pivot, I think, to Crowder and maybe a little bit to some of these guys, but just him running hot, getting more shots up, being a little more productive in some pathways, maybe to pull a little bit from Ayton too. But I do think there's just some world for him to be useful today. And because I'm not playing him in DFS, I do think trying to get some exposure to him in no house advantage seems reasonable, where to me, he could be your 1 pointer under in points plus rebounds plus assists in one, and then you're over in another. And I think that's one way to get different, because nobody's gonna be looking at Mikal Bridges. They're too busy plugging LeBron in just because he's a star player.
Yeah, he's 6,400 on DraftKings. Oh, I mean, that's in the showdown. My bad. I clicked on the wrong.
He's 5K on the main site.
5K. That's still too high for what he's been doing. And let me just tell you, I am a huge real life basketball Mikal Bridges fan. And not just because he got completely screwed over by the Sixers and his mom got interviewed at the NBA draft saying how excited they were because she works for the 76ers and how excited they were to live their long dream. He's a guy who went to Villanova, going to stay in Philly, and then gets traded like 10 minutes later to the Phoenix Suns, which was incredible. But he's just a really good real life basketball player, unbelievable defender. Him and Jay Crowder together, they are not a fun duo to have to face. You're seeing that LeBron James has been a little bit tempered, but Mikal Bridges, long, lanky, can defend multiple positions. He's awesome. That kind of impacts what he is from a fantasy perspective. And I think I have been shorting him more times than not. We don't need him at the small forward position on either side. And then on NHA, he's another guy that you got to be playing somebody down in those 1 and 2 point slots. I just think I'd rather go to a different direction. I'm not really for or against any of those numbers. If I did anything, I'd probably take the under on 11.5 points because he is so defensively focused in this series and this one specific. They don't really need him to sit out there and shoot threes. They don't need him to be focused offensively. His job tonight, him and Jay Crowder, is going to be to contain LeBron James as much as you can possibly contain LeBron James and see what happens.
Yeah, I get it. And I think to me, it's just trying to find one way to get different here because we do have some really obvious ones. Right. Even the ones that I can debate, like, are still going to be really obvious for a lot of people out there and still much more likely to hit on the under, like some of the Drummond props we talk about. So to me, Bridges, if I'm not getting action on him on the other sites, I think getting him on No House Advantage and trying to play both sides of it is one thing I would consider. So,
love it.
Yeah, that's just the thought there. We got about 3 minutes left till this show ends, but this tournament will be open there until 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time, all right before the game starts. So make sure to get in at nohouseadvantage.com and use that promo code Awesemo because they will deposit match you up to $20 right away. That is money that you can, again, get in your account right away. So if you want to put in 4 entries today in this tournament, you can do that by just putting in $20. They'll deposit match you to $20 more. Then you're in for 4 entries today for half the price of that. So good probability here to take down some money. Only 240 entries in the tournament, 1K up top, 2K guaranteed. So if you're one of those people out there who's just been dying on the other sites, Eric and I have talked about a lot throughout the year. Just be willing to play some other sites. Be willing to get different. And especially if you're a newer player, sites that'll help build your bankroll are the best thing you can do for yourself. So play over at No House Advantage, download them in the App Store as well, but go check them out in this tournament. Any final thoughts for you, Eric? I feel like we've covered basically every player on this one. And again, follow the No House Advantage projections on the site. If you just want to know the best possible plays, check out their optimizer as well. They're bringing to the app now. So some cool stuff they're doing. But any final thoughts for you? Any flags you want to plan here before we jump off?
I love talking about flagging plants and planting flags and all the things,
especially in people. I feel like that's always the weird one. That's
oh my yeah, NHA. Thank you so much for stopping by. No, I absolutely love playing on their site. It's been a lot of fun. I talk about their golf product quite a bit. I do enjoy whenever you do get some of their golf stuff that pops up here and there to be able to play on the Thursdays. There's a nice edge to that. There's some nice edges to some of these other things that we're doing, but definitely go support another site as well. And you're getting $20 back for free, basically, to go fire it up in this tournament. They've been nothing but great with us, nothing but great in terms of putting up the projections and helping us out to help make their site better and to work on things. It's been very nice to work with them as we've gone forward. I feel like they're just starting to bud with, this lineup generator and being able to help you make more lineups. That's kind of been a thing that a lot of the top players want to see in a product. They want to be able to mass multi-enter and they want to be able to make more than one lineup efficiently and quickly. And so I love that they're adding that and putting that into the website, and just excited to get over there and try out some Showdown, and you should too. And best of luck tonight.
Yeah, if you're playing on some of the other prop betting things out there, No House Advantage is going to be a great one for you because the lines don't move and they are sometimes an efficient way that's going to benefit you. So make sure you're checking them out. Follow at Eric Lindquist, follow at Chris Spags. Make sure to check out the tweet at Awesemo NBA right now. A giveaway going where all you have to do is guess who scores more points tonight, LeBron or Devin Booker. So, hey, parlay it with your prop bet exposure today on No House Advantage.
Parlay.
a pirate parlay for everybody out there. But go check out that tweet at Awesemo NBA. And we appreciate all you guys for being here. Shout out No House Advantage again. Use that promo code Awesemo on there to get your $20 deposit match. And we'll be back with you guys again very soon. So hit the like button before you go. Subscribe to the channel. Check out all the content we have all day long. And good luck.